Okay, we're live right now. Okay, hello, how's everyone doing? Okay, hope everyone's having a great day. Okay, one moment here. Just post this on Twitter. Okay, hello Venge. Okay. Okay, here we go. Live on Twitter. I'm gonna put it on live on Twitter now. Okay. Okay. Okay, hope everyone's having a great day here. Saints Row review is coming along pretty nicely, guys. Should be up by the end of the weekend. It's gonna be one of my best videos ever. Oh, thoughts on 171 so far? I like it, Beethoven. It's having a lot of fun with it. Who's not in the posse here?
Me.
Trio.
Join the posse then, and we'll start up a bounty in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm here too now.
Hey, Pro, I got a question if it's okay.
What's that?
Are you going
Hi,
to be
Steve.
streaming Modern Warfare 2 Season 1 at some point?
Gonna be visiting family next week for Thanksgiving.
okay.
So I'll probably stream it
My
then.
bad.
I'll probably stream it then. That's probably what we'll do.
Okay.
What
Hey,
day will
Pat,
that be?
Yeah?
Will that be Friday?
I can't join you because your persistence are full.
Oh, let me fix that right now. Okay.
What day will that stream be on? Pro? Will that
Okay.
be Friday?
I don't know yet.
There we go. There we go.
Okay, here we go.
Bye, Sebby.
When is your GTA Money Guide coming out? That'll probably come out in December. When I'm done with the Saints Row review, I'm gonna be focusing on my GTA 5 Trevor and Michael and Brad lore video, and it's gonna be just as good. If you loved my Floyd and Deborah video, you'll love the Brad video that I'm gonna be making, and it's gonna explain like Brad's
back.
backstory.
About them.
It's gonna be explaining Brad's backstory and some things you might not have known about Brad, that I'll be talking about.
Lester talked about him a bit.
Yes, I'm gonna have all of that. And there's a lot of information about Brad that you can find. And then after I'm done with that we'll probably do the Claude lore video, and then probably cover the next GT Online update in December, and then probably make that money guide. Smoking on that Volition pack, honestly, that's what they get for destroying their legacy by being at the mercy of Randy Pitchford. 171 is also gold. Yeah, 171 is a great game, and, some people said the map's too small, but what they don't understand is it's an early, build. The map is going to be much larger. They're going to constantly expanding it. It's just a small thing they have right now, but they're adding more to the map. It's going to get bigger and bigger.
Something. Well, I look forward to seeing this new 171 game. Now I got a country song stuck in my head. Hey, Pro.
Yeah?
My moonshine is ready, so if we could do that later.
Oh, yeah, we could do that too.
Appreciate it.
Pro, is
You know,
171 on
how long did the stream
Xbox?
supposed
Please
to
tell
be?
me it is. They're eventually going to release a console version, I believe. But right now they're focusing entirely on PC. The developer of the game actually contacted me about it, and so they liked my video and they sent me like a review copy of the game, and so that's what I was
Cool.
playing. And so it's I wanted to thank the developer, Beta Games Group, for sending me a copy of 171. But they liked my video talking about it, and so they saw that on my channel, and
Fun fact, is that you behind me? Who is that behind me?
Did you hear about Tom Petty's
Is my
estate
horse faster than
potentially
you?
suing Carrie Lake over her using the late musician's "I Won't Back Down" song in her failed? No, I didn't hear about that. I don't know much about musicians, so I don't know.
Okay, turn that down, dude.
I don't know who's Tom Petty. Thank you, Mario, for the super chat.
Damage, right?
I mean, thank you, Mario, for sponsoring my channel again.
It's causing damage.
And thank you, Eric, for the super chat. Hi, Pro. Happy Friday. Hope you're doing well. I'm glad you're still sticking with the Friday Red Dead streams. They're very relaxing and enjoyable. Thank you, Eric. And I always do, like, Red Dead streams on Fridays. Thank you, Victor. Brazil #1. Well, thank you, man, for the super chat.
Alright, so what happened last time, I'm gonna hog-tie this bitch.
Do you know how long you'll be streaming for, April?
What, today?
Yeah.
Like 2 hours, like...
Okay.
Come here, lady. Look at that, already off to a great start. Come here, Cloud. Your assistance is required.
Can you talk about history? Well, there's a lot of events I could talk about, but, right now I guess I want to focus on a few games and stuff like that, because I talked about history a lot in the last Red Dead stream. Hey Pro, I know your Saints Row 2022 review is coming out. I'm looking to try the series. I only have a PS4. I played 4 and hated it. I was curious, do you think Saints Row 3 is better than Saints Row 2022 in your opinion? Yes. Saints Row the 3rd is much better than Saints Row 2022, definitely. I think the only thing that I think you could say that Saints Row 2022 does better than Saints Row the 3rd is that Saints Row the 3rd has, Saints Row 2022 I think has a better city than Saints Row the 3rd. Like, I liked Santo Alesso better as a location than Steelport, but not by much. But if you compare it to Stillwater, Stillwater is still 10 times better than Santo Alesso. Like, doesn't even come close. But I didn't ever like Steelport as a city.
Vehicle customization?
Vehicle customization, I think it's, fine in both games, but, my main issue with the Saints Row reboot is just the stupid glitches. There's still plenty of glitches that are game-breaking that are in the game. And I still, I went on the game. There was a patch yesterday. There was an update yesterday. And I went on the game to test to see if those glitches are still in the game that were pissing me off because that's part of my review. And guess what? Those glitches are still in the game that are pissing me off. And so it's, I'll have a whole section on the glitches alone in that review also. So that's just, that. But yeah, it was glitches pissed me off in the Saints Row reboot and the cringe storyline. I think probably the cringe is probably what pisses me off the most in the Saints Row reboot. Yeah, the cringe I would say is probably the worst part about the reboot. I don't know what they were thinking, with the do they not have like anybody like, do they have like not anybody that knows how to write a good gang storyline anymore, knows how to write like a good criminal storyline? I don't know where they come up with these ideas.
Based on fact to take this little person, please. Just take off a horse, come on.
The weapon customization is still glitched? Oh, I have to test that then. I'll test that before my review comes out.
But like, can you sell an argument my brother having? It's 2022 and he's complaining about the new Pokemon game and everyone else is complaining saying it looks bad. Does a game really have to look good in this age? Even if it has good story and good gameplay?
I think graphics are,
really good?
I don't think graphics are always like, oh no, did I kill the bounty target? I think I did, whatever, it's not a big deal.
I believe you did, yes.
I just bumped in, but, graphics aren't everything. A game could have, like, a game could have not good graphics, but, still be, like, still be an amazing game. But I would like games to also look visually good. I'd like that, too. What is it, like, if you look at, like, if you look at a game like Left 4 Dead, for instance, Left 4 Dead doesn't have the greatest graphics, but yet Left 4 Dead is like an amazing game, and the gameplay is just so cool. So it's just, that's what I'll say about that. Is,
graphics don't have to be everything, dude.
Yeah.
No, they don't. I know, look at the cat. Graphics don't have to be everything, dude.
No, I never played Warframe.
The game can still be amazing and have terrible graphics.
The writers of Saints Row 2022 got inspiration from The Last of Us 2. That's why it's trash. But thank you for that super chat, Justin. But I would recommend Saints Row 1, 2, and 3. Those are great games. Saints Row 4 is kind of whatever. It's better than Saints Row 2022 at least. But it's yeah. But the thing is though, I think I'll tell you guys something. When I publish the Saints Row review, it's gonna be up in a few days. When I publish the Saints Row review, I think a lot of you guys are gonna laugh during my review. And the thing is though, in my review, I'm not even trying to be funny. Like, I have a few memes here and there, but I'm not even trying to be funny. It's just me ranting and just getting pissed off at the game that I think a lot of people are gonna find funny, personally. So it's just, there's like a lot of parts where I rant about the characters and what pisses me off in the storyline and stuff, and how it makes no sense. And, Pro, what will you like to see in the next GTA DLC? I don't know. You know, honestly, what I'd like to see in the next GTA DLC.
We have the same hat. Look at that.
If anything, maybe I'd like to see a new location, something like Cayo Perico again, something like that. I'm the thing is though is I'm not against the Cops and Crooks DLC, and I'm not against like a Michael movie DLC, but the thing is there's no evidence for them, and that's the thing is to, like so you know, I really don't know.
To the Cops and Crooks DLC, there is evidence.
But you know, do you know what,
everything got revealed.
Do you know what made me so happy though? That video that I made, like, ranting about the clickbait, it blew up. Like, it almost has 50,000 views now. I didn't expect that video to get, like, you know, that many views. Maybe I was expecting it to get 20,000 views at max. I didn't expect it to get nearly 50,000 views. And it was, and that video is, like, has actually more, like, quadruple the views of some of the clickbait channels right now on their recent videos. So it's, yeah, I'm very happy about that. And thank you guys for the support on that. It was just this, you know, I just, you know, I had clickbait recommended to me a bunch of times before I made that video, and I just snapped, and I got pissed off at all the clickbait that I just saw on YouTube, and I just started recording. And that entire video that I recorded, like just me ranting about clickbait, like a half-hour video the other day, that video was entirely, you know, on the spot. There was no script. I had no script in that video, nothing. I had like the pictures, the thumbnails that I had ready, but I had no script. I literally spoke from the heart that entire video. I just all spoke on my own, and just like everything that I fought, and it, you know, worked out really good. And you know, that, but, like, the thing is, though, is I don't know how somebody can put thumbnails of that, like, that on YouTube, like, November 3rd, GTA 6, and, like, and, you know, get away with that. I don't get that. You know, I think that's personally stupid. Thank you for sponsoring my channel again, Tyler. Thanks, man. Your video on how to avoid griefers helped so much. Free aim was a genius move. Thank you, David. I'm glad that helped you out. Thanks, man. Thank you, HX Broken. Thank you for the super chat. You didn't post anything. Did you want to ask me a question?
Pro, I'm gonna get going now, okay?
Okay, I'll see you then. Good, take care, man.
Okay. Okay.
See you later.
Bye.
Yeah, see you later. See you later, Trill.
Yeah.
Trust me, you don't
Later,
seem like the
Trio.
type to be expressive for content. Whenever you get passionate about something, it's from the heart. Thank you, Zide.
There's a spot in the lobby now. Someone wants to join.
Hey, Pro, what do you think, Caesar's reaction would be to Claude killing Catalina? I don't think that Caesar, I don't think that Caesar really would care that much, honestly. Like, you know, see, the thing is, though, is like, you know, sure, Caesar probably wouldn't be happy, but Caesar isn't going to go out of his way to travel across the country to try to find the person who killed Catalina, because Caesar himself probably knows that Catalina has so many enemies, and so he's not going to bother, you know, looking for that person. And also, there's really no proof that Caesar or Catalina had, like, a good relationship. The only thing that's known is that they respected each other somewhat. That's the only thing that's known about it. It's not known that they had, like, a loving relationship. At most, you know, Catalina says about Caesar is she says, Caesar said that you were a real man. That's what she says. So that means she values, like, Caesar's opinion a lot. And then like when CJ says, I'm gonna get back at your stupid cousin, and then like Caesar says, you're gonna diss my familia, like, so, you know, he does care to an extent, but, you know, it's yeah, I don't think he would really, you know, gotta go out of his way to look for Claude or anything like that. Happy birthday to Professional. Well, it's not my birthday, but it's gonna be my channel's birthday in 10 days, if that's what you're thinking about. My birthday's in June, but my channel's birthday, when my channel first started, was November 28th. So that's
That's but a couple days before my actual birthday.
yeah. I think it's gonna be this channel's gonna be 7 years old in 10 days, and so I probably will have like a video about that. Thank you, James, for the super chat. Oh, yes, yeah, Caesar would have no chance against Claude. Claude would kill him, definitely. So that's, you know, Catalina was much tougher than Caesar, too. You know, Caesar's a pretty tough guy, too, but I think Catalina was much tougher than him. So it's, so, yeah, I don't think Caesar would have a chance against Claude, personally. I mean, Claude took out Catalina's entire cartel army and shot down her helicopter, so, you know, what chance would Caesar have against him? So... Mr. Waifu, thanks. Man, this is some old BS, how I feel about Saints Row the Third. Thanks, man. Is that a line a character says? I'm trying to remember which character says that, but thank you. Thank you, Mr. Waifu, and thank you, James. I'm sorry I didn't see your super chat earlier. I don't think anyone could stop Claude. Yeah, you might be right on that. Why have you never went for Red Dead's Platinum? Are you talking about the first game or the second game? The first game, I just never really got around to it. And the second game, I was like so busy. Like, Red Dead Redemption 2 probably is the hardest Platinum that I've ever seen. And so it's just, it's such a hard game, would be such a hard game to Platinum. So I'd have to, you know, I'd have to do a lot of stuff. And so I don't, you know, I never got the chance to because there's so many videos. Yes, Riley Freeman whenever something bad happens, so, yeah. What's the difference between psychopath and sociopath? Sociopaths are most like hardened criminals. You know, sociopaths, you know, they might sociopaths the easiest way to distinguish a sociopath and a psychopath is that a sociopath will at least they at least have some people that they care about. Like, sociopaths, you know, might love their wife, or they might love, like, their family and stuff like that, but everyone else they don't care about. Like, no one else, really. Only their you know, wife and, like, close family. Or, you know, their husband. But it's, a psychopath, on the other hand, a psychopath doesn't care about anyone, not even their family. They have no conscience. There's no such thing as a conscience. So that's it. It's the lack of empathy. That's the basic, that's the best way to define a psychopath is the lack of empathy, the lack of a conscience. They don't care about anyone. The only person they care about is themselves.
That's one of the reasons why in Saints Row 4, Zinyak called the boss a sociopath, because he only cares about the Saints and nobody else on Earth.
No, the boss definitely is not a psychopath in Saints Row. At least the old Saints Row, like, yeah, Saints Row 1 and 2, even, like, Saints Row 2, when you had, like, Scary Gangster Boss, like, Scary Gangster Boss in Saints Row 2 was still not a psychopath, because he actually cared about his gang, and he would put his life on the line to save his gang, so that's, like, that, but everyone else outside the gang is pretty much fair game. He doesn't care about anyone outside the gang, so that's pretty much that. He at least has loyalty to his friends. Volition has now gone bankrupt. I heard about that. You know, they've been purchased by Gearbox.
Very well, but this could be cheaper. Good. Fine.
I wonder what the status on the Saints Row reboot DLCs is gonna be now that they've been purchased by Gearbox. Oh, I know Mr. Waifu.
I hope that's actually good news, though, if Gearbox is now started.
You needed help selling something, right? Oh. I missed the part where that's my problem, Spider-Man, yep. We're making a game for a modern audience. All right, yeah. Yeah, and you know, you know how stupid like the new Saints Row game was. They don't even use the word homie in that game at all. At all. It's now called Friends. That's what it's called. Why? Is homie now apparently an offensive word? You know, how is homie an offensive word? I don't understand. Homie is basically just a slang street term for friend. It just means close friend. That's just basically what it means. It's not a bad word or anything like that, you know. It's just a slang street word for friend. So that's just, like, I don't understand, like, why they don't use the word homie. How is that offensive? I don't get that. But...
Yeah, hey, Pat, so speaking of the word homie and stuff, back when I was in high school, I had, there's people in high school who would actually call their friends homie, and then the teachers would actually get mad at them for saying homie.
That's not That's not a curse word. That's the teacher is stupid. It's not a curse.
Yeah, I know. Even teachers get offended by the most dumbest things nowadays too.
Is anyone low on gold near me? There is a treasure hunter over here. Does anyone want a treasure map?
No, I'm good, but thank you.
Yeah.
Melons, where you at?
Oh, does he need
Watching
gold?
Stuff with. Mom was watching stuff with possible copyright music on me.
Okay. Who's the worst psychopath, Dimitri or Dahlia from Ace Attorney? I remember Dahlia from Ace Attorney. She definitely is a psychopath. You've got that right, definitely. She's very manipulative. She doesn't care about anyone. You know, she puts on a fake personality. She has no conscience. You're definitely right. Dahlia in Ace Attorney is definitely a psychopath. Who's worse, her or Dimitri? I would say Dimitri is because Dimitri has just caused way more suffering than Dahlia has. But yeah, Dahlia was like a really bad person in Ace Attorney. Yeah, and Dahlia was always like a really creepy like character because like she acted all sweet and innocent, but like her real personality is like something completely else. Like, you know, when at the end of the trial when you see her real personality come out, like, you know, it's just scary. So yeah, she was, yeah, she was a really messed up person. You gonna play God of War Ragnarok on your channel? Probably not, Alien. I have a few games that I have to, play. And I'm also, in a few days, I'll be playing the Dark Pictures, the Devil's, the Devil Inside Me. I didn't get, it came out today, but I didn't get the chance to play it yet, and so I'm gonna play it. The most evil GTA character of all time? That's easy, Dimitri. Revenue agents are IRS, right? I don't remember. Yes, that is correct. Basically, a lot of people do not know this. And thank you everyone for the super chats. Thank you, James. Disco. The new Saints Row is an absolute joke. I agree. Thanks, man. And thank you, Alien. The whole LCPD is gonna be on us now. You can't just do that to a cop, Johnny, after he killed over 100 cops before coming on to meet Jim and killing cops after the mission. Yeah, but I think it's because the police didn't know whether the Lost were behind that, but they were eventually going to trace the heroin back to them, so that's why I think they were, talking about modern audiences is a death rattle for any media. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Waifu. And to answer your question, Alien, so a lot of people don't know the what's they're called, the revenue men, the revenue men. I'm just losing my track of thought right now. Damn. What was the name of the full organization again in Reddit Online? It was the Bureau of something. It was the Bureau of
The IRS.
No, I know that, but what were they called in Reddit Online?
Bureau of Internal Revenue.
Bureau of Internal Revenue, that's it. I was losing my track of thought here. Okay, so the Bureau of Internal Revenue. What a lot of people don't know is that the revenue men that you fight in Reddit Online are a real faction. They were a real life group. And they weren't called revenue men. Like, they called them revenue men in this game, but they were called revenuers. That's what they were called. The outlaws called them revenuers, not revenue men. But basically, they were from the Bureau of Internal Revenue, which is like a real-life, government organization. And basically, they went after moonshiners. They went after bootleggers in the Wild West. And, and they didn't just do it in the Wild West. They went after bootleggers pretty much anywhere. But in the Wild West, there was a lot less law and order. And so there's a lot more bootlegging. And so they went after them. Now, the thing about the Bureau of Internal Revenue, basically where they came from is they were actually formed after they were actually formed during the Civil War, and they were formed during the Civil War to actually collect taxes. And what happened was the federal government needed a way to get a lot of tax money really quickly, and the reason Lincoln needed federal tax money really quickly is because the South had just seceded and a civil war had started, and so Lincoln needed a way to fund like a massive army, get them like cannons, muskets, like uniforms, trains, like food rations, everything that you can think of, and so that's where the Bureau of Internal Revenue comes in. Now what happened was the government had created a federal income tax, but then after the Civil War, the federal income tax is actually removed, so it was gone, and there was no federal income tax. And how did the U.S. fund itself with no federal income tax? It funded itself mostly through tariffs, so through trade. When other countries would like trade with us, we would tax them, and that's where the U.S. government got most of its money historically. The other things that were taxed were alcohol and tobacco was taxed extremely. And so that is, it was alcohol, tobacco, and tariffs. That's where the government got most of its tax revenue from. And so the Bureau of Internal Revenue was set up specifically to get tax money from that, to prevent that. And the Bureau of Internal Revenue, they weren't just a tax agency, they also had their own military, their own, police force they would arrest people with. And they were very corrupt. Like a lot of them were really corrupt. They would take bribes, they would shut down certain people, but then would shut down other people. And during Prohibition, they were actually called the Bureau of Prohibition. So they were changed. So when you think of during Prohibition, you think of those government agents that like would go into like speakeasies, the illegal bars, and just break them up. Those were basically, what became of the Bureau of Internal Revenue. Basically how the U.S. funded itself with no federal income tax was it didn't have a large military. So basically, historically, the U.S. has had like a small military throughout its history, mostly like 10,000 to 20,000 men active. And when there was like a massive war, like World War I, the Civil War, they would, have this big military, they would build this big military up, and then they would disband it right after the war ended. And that happened with the Civil War. They built up a massive military, and then they disbanded it after the Civil War. Same thing with World War I. World War II was the first time in American history when we built up like a massive military, and we didn't disband it after after World War II. We instead kept a large military. The reason we kept a large military, we didn't disband it, is because we thought that the Soviets were going to be our next enemy. And so after that point, the U.S. military never disbanded. It just stayed large from World War II to present day. But historically, the U.S. military has always been, just 10 to 20,000, like 30,000 strong at most. And to answer your question also, Alien, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, they still exist today. So the revenue men, they exist today. The agency does. But it's a different name. It's not called the Bureau of Internal Revenue anymore. Do you know what it's called today? It's called the IRS. Yeah, that's it. So the Bureau of Internal Revenue actually is the IRS, really, the Internal Revenue Service. That is. A lot of people don't know that. They did become the IRS. So back in the day, the IRS did have basically soldiers. Like they had a militarized police force. They had a lot of these guys. And the IRS does have like a police force that have guns that can arrest people today, but it's not like as big as it used to be in the past. And the IRS oftentimes don't use force to like arrest people. It's not like they're walking into like dangerous situations like a lot of times. Yeah. So that's
The thing about it is, the Joker from the DC universe. He's scared of the IRS.
Yeah.
That's how you know the IRS. You don't want to fuck with them. They'll come after you. When you know the Joker's scared of them, that's when you know you shouldn't mess with them. A cold-hearted criminal will kill anybody.
You're gonna play yeah, I probably won't play God of War, Alien. I'm just not into that. Thank you, Alize. Hopefully they go back to their roots now that they're going to Gearbox. Well, I don't know, because Gearbox is owned by Take-Two Interactive, right? And I think I think ultimately the reason they purchased Volition is so that they would never have to worry about competition from Saints Row again. I think that's ultimately why. And I'm not talking about the new Saints Row. I'm talking about, like, actually going back to its roots. Pro, my friends tell me how girls are interested in me, but I don't really see the point in it. I'm 16, I don't care for it. Do you have any advice? I don't really care for dating. I'm 28 and I don't really care for dating at all. It's just not for me. It's not for everyone. Don't let don't let, like, you know, society push stuff on you, telling you have to do this or that or that. It's like the same thing with college. If people say, oh, you got to go to college, and they'll constantly push you to go to college, or they'll, you know, they'll push you to date. If you don't want to date, you don't want to go to college, or you don't want to do something else, you know, that's your choice. You know, don't let people make that choice for you. So, like, just because somebody else is, just because the vast majority of people are doing something doesn't mean that you have to do it too. So it's just, that's you know, that's the advice that I would give you. Thank you, Kami, for that super chat. Let's talk about the bad cop drop, the mission where Jim and Johnny have to lead the two corrupt cops to Actor Industrial to kill them. Yeah, I guess, but they were also corrupt cops, and so I think that I don't there's a huge probability that the police might have thought the Angels of Death did it, so that's also a probability on it. Who's the most evil bad guy, Dimitri or Micah? Dimitri, because Dimitri pretends to be Nico's friend, where Micah never really pretends to be Arthur's friend. At least he tries to, but Arthur doesn't fall for it. So that's what I would say. But yeah, you know, the what I was saying about earlier, the Bureau of Internal Revenue became the IRS. And what I'll say is that the IRS is probably the most disliked, like, federal agency in, like, America. Like, out of all the, you know, government agencies, the IRS is probably the most disliked one. And, like, you know, they had, like you said, that Batman joke when, like, he says, like, you know, Joker is scared of the IRS and stuff like that. The IRS does have, like, a negative reputation, and, like, a lot of people feel the IRS plays favorites. Because basically what happens is, and I don't advocate, like, cheating on taxes or anything like that. But what my point is that there's, like, a lot of really rich people that, like, you know, they know all these loopholes and everything just so they don't have to, like, you know, pay, you know, a lot of taxes. But then the average, like, you know, average person will try to, you know, do something to, like, pay less taxes, and the IRS will go crazy at them, you know. So that's ultimately, you know, why people don't have respect for the IRS and don't like the IRS, because they feel like the IRS favors the rich people and doesn't crack down on them. But then the average person, you know, if they're not paying all of their taxes, the IRS goes after them. And so that's ultimately why, you know, that's why people are so pissed off when the IRS hired, like, 90,000 agents. It's ultimately because of that. You know, not trying to get into politics or anything, just talk about the government agency. But that's ultimately, like, you know, why, you know, the IRS has such a bad reputation. People don't like them because of that.
The Joker robbed the bank just to pay his taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, but the thing is, the IRS that would not work either way, because the IRS would probably track where that money came from also. So that would,
It was from Batman the Animated Series with the guy who voiced Batman.
Oh no, I don't do politics, Ricky. I stay away from it. This is a gaming channel, and I don't talk politics. Like, sometimes I might mention certain things about the economy, but I don't, you know, I never, you know, pick sides or choose politics or talk politics or anything like that. I hate, you know, just politics in general personally. But that was just talking more of the history of the IRS and why people don't like them. That's, you know, ultimately what I was talking about.
I hate politics too.
1 minute it takes me halfway across the map, and now it takes me here.
I don't support any political party.
I'm not getting into it.
2022 Game of the Year? My 2022 Game of the Year is Sniper Elite 5.
A lot of people want God of War Ragnarok to take that place.
Mine is personally Sniper Elite. That's what I like.
Mine is personally Dynamite 2, Stay Human.
You like glitchy, buggy mess at launch? Like
yeah, Aldo's death was kind of stupid in the Godfather.
He gets killed by just a random Cuban sniper. They did him dirty.
Look, I'm one of the few people that actually likes drinking V8. Like, people think that this is disgusting, but I actually like V8.
My mom drinks that or something. Some liquid.
I shouldn't really worry about this,
V8,
but I shouldn't really worry about this, but it's funny
stuff.
How Michael pronounces Martin's name as Martin instead of Martin, like Trevor and Franklin. I think isn't that how you pronounce it in Spanish though? So I think that's what Michael is. You know, I think Michael's trying to be more formal. I don't think they'll kill off Ghost. He's too much of a popular character to kill him off again.
He's the face of Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah, they're not gonna kill him off. They're not gonna kill off Captain Price. So that's just
I did see from Modern Warfare 2 that the Task Force Red 4141, whatever the hell it's called, those are the base skins for them. So I'm hoping they're getting some bundle skins pretty soon, so everyone else gets access to those 4 characters.
Professional. One day you should watch this YouTuber called Mark Nico. He has a video about Vice City. It's about what happens when Tommy goes to the deal at the beginning and nothing goes wrong. It was a cool video. I think I actually saw that one. I think I left a comment on it. Yeah, I think I did. Thank you for the super chat, Alizé. But I think I seen that Vice City, but nothing goes wrong, right? Is that? I remember that video was like not. It wasn't when he first published it. That video had like maybe 10,000 views the first few months, and I saw it and I left a comment. And I said, I'm surprised this doesn't have more views. And then a few months after I posted that, the video just blew up in views. But yeah, I left a comment on the video a year ago. I saw it. It's 8,600 likes. And I said, I'm surprised it doesn't have more views. Yeah, that one was kind of funny. So he did that video really well. Thank you, John, for the super chat. Oh, I can. But the thing is, though, is I'll tell you. I can drink V8 no problem. When it's from the bottle that you buy like from the fridge, and like the can, I can drink it. But you know what I can't drink? I can't drink the actual big bottle of V8, the one that you buy like on the shelf. The reason I can't drink that one is because I hate the bottom of it. The bottom of the V8. You know how it's like all mushy and stuff like that. I don't like that. But whenever I drink from the can, it doesn't have any of that mushy stuff, and so it's it's nice. I like vegetable juice, so it's just I generally have a fine time drinking that.
It's like something that rabbits would drink.
Will Red Dead 2 ever get another big update, like more businesses, or maybe the hot air balloon will be so cool to fly? I'm sorry to tell you this, Coder, but no. Red Dead Online will never get another big update again. Rockstar has said, like, earlier this year, that there's no more big updates coming out for this game. They want to focus on GTA 6, which I'll tell you is such a stupid argument. It's such a stupid argument, and I don't know why people defend Rockstar on this. It's like, I don't get that. People defend Rockstar and say, like, I don't know why you're so mad at them, Professional. They're gonna bring us GTA 6 faster, or they need those resources to work on GTA 6. That's nonsense. That's complete nonsense. You're telling me that a studio like Rockstar, a multi-billion-dollar company, that has, sold, like, Grand Theft Auto, one of the best-selling games of all time, Red Dead Redemption 2, 45 million copies. You're telling me that, that this company cannot hire more people to work on Red Dead Online, and they need those resources for GTA 6? Seriously? I would believe that more if it was an indie studio, but not Rockstar. So that's just stupid. It's just an excuse they're using to not have to put work into Red Dead Online anymore. That's ultimately what I'll say about that.
I made it to level 19 in the Bounty Hunter license. Yay! I had a comment, but I wasn't going to say it because I didn't want to be rude.
Did somebody need help selling a moonshine business?
That would be me, Melons.
Okay, I'll disband. Let's take care of your thing then right now.
Alright, Melons, send me an invite to your posse too, please.
Let me form it real quick. Boop. Give it a second, because this thing takes a hot minute. Posse.
I recently told my friends of an idea I had for a rival gang for the SCPD, Sin City Speed Demons, in our fanfiction series, the Hellraisers. They're evil. In what game would this be? Or this is like a book, DL?
I got one more slot left. Anybody else want to help me out? I only have a small one because I can't afford a bigger one. I'm broke.
Hey, what game are you excited about to come out? The Devil Inside Me. I'm excited for that to come out. Well, it already has come out. I haven't gotten the chance to play The Devil Inside Me. And I'm just waiting on my friend Lewis to see if he'll play that with me. Why doesn't Red Dead Redemption 2 have a PS5 version? Because Rockstar's stupid.
I'm too broke for that.
Thank you, David. Can you teleport me inside the Moonshine Shack?
Yeah, let me get there first.
Okay.
Moonshine Shack. Ignore the name, it's the little clan thing I'm in with my buddy. Me and my buddy formed it not a couple years, 5+ years back.
Don't get me wrong, GTA Online is still getting updates and all that, but the fact that people were still playing Red Dead and wanted Rockstar to give them something just shows their greed. I'll say that. Look, the thing is though is that what Rockstar did has no honor to it. There's no honor to what Rockstar did, and you know there's something called honor and integrity, which I believe very strongly in. And I believe that if you make a promise to your community, you keep that promise. You keep your word. You know, whenever I tell people, for instance, that I have a video coming out on a date, and then something...
Go in the bar and drink something.
When
My Moonshine Shack is broke.
When I have a video coming out on a certain day, like a lore video, and something unexpected happens, like something stupid happens, and I cannot make that lore video, like something comes up in my personal life or something else, you know, comes up and it, you know, interferes, and I can't make the lore video at the time. Do you know what I always do? I always go on my channel, I make a community post, and I apologize to my fans, and I say that I'm really sorry, guys, that I wasn't able to post a lore video. I had something come up, but I promise you, it will be up, and I always keep my word and finish that lore video. And so it's what Rockstar did with Red Dead Online is like, you know, so dishonorable. There's no integrity behind it. And it's, you know, I'm with that very strong belief that you make a promise, you keep your word. And so with what Rockstar did to this game, don't tell me they couldn't even have make one final update. What they did was a complete insult to this game, how they treated the fans. They could have at least given us one final big update. Just one final actual big giant update to thank the fans for playing Red Dead Online all those years. They could have given us something like houses, maybe house customization, let's buy properties, given us heists, maybe like an update with houses and heists. Something big. A few new guns, houses that you can customize, and heists, all in one big update. They did that, and then they said, here's one final big update for you guys. We thank you guys for playing Red Dead Online. Thank you guys for supporting this game. I guarantee you the backlash would not have been as bad. But what they did, instead, they just said, oh, no more major updates. Here's 3 Telegram missions. Have fun, guys. We're not supporting the game anymore. That's literally the most disgusting... That's the most disgusting thing that I've seen them do.
Not the second thing.
Even if they weren't going to, even if they weren't going to make that much money, and not everything is about money. I keep hearing people say, oh, you know, Red Dead Online wasn't making enough money, and GTA Online makes more. Not everything is about money. Not everything is. You have to have some loyalty to your fans, some loyalty, and you have to have some dedication to your fans. And so that's what they.
This thing?
No, I guess you can drive. I'll just protect you. But it's just
Okay.
The point that I'm making is that Rockstar should have had the loyalty and honor to at least release one final update for their fans on the game, and then ended it if they weren't going to make any more. But the way they ended it like that, with just, you know, 3 Telegram missions, that's it, we're done. That's really the worst way that you can possibly end an online game. That's just terrible, and that's stupid. And you know, Rockstar should be ashamed of themselves for that.
I'm trying to be careful so I don't break any of the moonshine. I kind of want a full paycheck on this one.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John CSR2. And thank you, Coder, again. They should have brought back Roach.
Far?
Let me look. You can go faster than this. You don't have to go this slow. Just watch for bumps. The delivery is at Van Horn.
Is that far from here?
I would just hold X. You don't have to tap it. Tapping it makes it go faster, but you hold X and you'll still go at decent speed. I
guess this is decent.
I mean, I guess you could probably speed up a tiny bit, but just watch for the hills and you'll be good. But okay, about Roach Alien, is some people are speculating that Alex is Roach. That's what some people are speculating. I don't know if that's true. I don't necessarily believe that. But you know, we might see him in another game.
We might see him in the next couple seasons for all we know.
The mushy stuff is called
fresh,
Pulp. Oh, okay. Pro energy drink reviews would be great. Well, Strellock, I'm telling you this, I wouldn't do reviews on energy drinks because I don't drink them. I can't stand energy drinks. You know, energy drinks are just really unhealthy. You know, I drink V8. This is, you know, vegetable juice, but it's oh yeah, this is the part where you probably want to slow down on a little bit, but it's but once you get past this, you know, you can probably speed up a bit more.
I was gonna answer a question, but I think I will know the answer anyway.
Keep up the work, Pro. Love your videos. Thank you, John. If GTA 6 is woke, then it'll be the last straw for the fans. I guess we'll have to see. Thank you, Mario, for the super chat. I just don't want to see any
Personally-
politics in the I just don't want to see any politics in
Personally,
GTA 6. I don't mind if they have like fictional politics or they have like some corrupt politician or something like that, but I don't want to see anything resembling real world politics in that game whatsoever. Nothing like that. I don't want to see it. And actually, I'm excited to play as a female character. I think playing as a female character is cool, and I really want to see what direction they're gonna take the game in. But I just don't want to see any politics stuff in it personally. But I think playing as Lucia, I think is a cool idea, and I think she's gonna be an interesting character. And I'm also excited for Jason as well.
To be honest, I hope GTA 6 tanks because Rockstar deserved it for how they treated this game. I know people can be pissed off about that, but that's how I feel.
I mean, I want like GTA 6 to do well because I love Vice City so much, and Vice City is probably my favorite like location. Well, either Vice City or Liberty City, I would say, is my favorite location in like the GTA in the GTA world. And so I wouldn't want to see Vice City like go to hell.
I was gonna answer this question, but I think I already know the answer anyway.
What?
Which one's better for group? Rockstar or Avalanche Studios group?
Rockstar or what?
Avalanche Studios group.
Avalanche
It's a
Studios
Sweden-
group?
Yeah.
They sound familiar. I don't know if I remember them.
They do the Just Cause game.
Oh, the
Was that
Just
it?
Cause
They did.
games.
Yeah. the
Yeah,
Just Cause
Rockstar's
games.
worse. But yeah, I want GTA 6 to do well. Like, I want another, like,
He's
open
so
world
chasing
crime
us.
game that I can play.
For me, I think that one would be better. The Avalanche Studios group. I think that one would be better.
Rockstar's
Yes,
worse
they
than
update my
EA.
games.
Yeah, I would say they're just as bad as each other, or Rockstar's even worse. Thank you, Dead Star, for the super chat. What's the most
That's my
disturbing?
game.
What's the most disturbing mission in a GTA game? That's easy. I don't remember the name of the mission. I think it's called Meet Something. But it's the most disturbing mission in a GTA game is in GTA Liberty City Stories, the 2005 game, and there's a mission in which Tony, which your name is actually the Soprano. Tony is actually, based on Tony Soprano. I'm sure you know that in Liberty City Stories. But Tony, he'll take Casa over to the sawmill, and what he'll do is he'll lock the door, and then Casa tries to run away, and so like the room is dark, and you have to try to find where Casa is hiding, and so you have like an axe. And you have to like slowly creep up on him, and then you have to kill Casa with the axe, and you have like a bunch of people like screaming and stuff like that in that mission. And then the mission actually gets worse because what Tony does is after he kills Casa with the axe, it's implied that he froze Casa's body in the meat grinder, the soughing, and then what he does afterwards, he takes all of Casa's body parts, he puts it in the back of Casa's van, the police come after him, he drives across town, loses the police, and then what he does is he takes the van with Casa's body parts, takes it right back to the butcher shop, and then he sells Casa's remains to the butcher shop as meat that's going to be served there. I think that's personally the most disturbing GTA mission of all time. And Casa was a scumbag, the guy that he killed, but it was just the way the mission was designed and everything. And I don't even think that the mission should be deleted. I think it was actually an interesting mission, despite of how crazy it was. It was just the mission was to show you what a psycho Tony was. That's what the I think that's what it did. Be slow on the train tracks. That's the part that gets people to break a bottle.
Yeah.
But that's to answer your question, that would be, I would say, the most disturbing mission. I actually have a video of it on my channel. Just go on my channel and look up the most disturbing GTA mission of all time. I have a video on that specifically. And it's like a video I did like
being chased by
last year.
saying they just shot my damn thing. Screw you too, IRS.
Another Friday. Take care, bro. Thank you, Athena. Thanks.
Somebody shoot this guy. Thank you.
There was nobody appearing on my map.
Oh, well, they were there.
Okay, I'll tell you guys what the name of the mission is on my channel. Hang on. Let me see.
More douchebags with guns. Ow. Fucker. Frick.
The other really disturbing mission was in GTA 4 where you had to like Eddie Lowe serial killer missions. Okay, the mission that I was telling you about, the most disturbing like GTA mission is called this. Go on my channel and look this up. Look up this. The most brutal and darkest mission ever. And that's the name of the video. And that's the me playing and reacting to that mission.
Yay, now I just pissed off all of Van Horn.
Is Agent Ross's Bureau of Investigation the FBI? Yes. That was what became the FBI. But he, in Red Dead Redemption 2, he's not FBI, he's a Pinkerton agent, which, that's basically private cops.
Yeah. Cops put a PMC.
Yeah, the Pinkertons
Actually,
the Pinkertons are basically mercenaries when you think about it. That's what they pretty much are.
Private military cops, because basically they have more men than the standing military of the United States at the time.
Or you can call them private police contractor, as you could say. A PPC.
PPC?
Yeah, the Pinkertons are not the good guys by any means. The Pinkertons were some really bad people, like back in the day. They were really bad, very corrupt. They were very bad people.
It happened in real life. Andrew Carnegie's, I believe, one of his workshops, people were protesting there.
Yes, and then the Pinkertons were
conditions.
brought in. The Pinkertons came in with lever-action rifles. It was a massacre. It was just, that was one of the worst things they did. But basically,
Workers threw rocks at them or something.
the workers had guns also, so it wasn't that the workers just threw rocks at them. But the thing is, though, the Pinkertons were the ones who instigated the fight, because even though the workers had guns too, the Pinkertons were the ones who showed up there with guns towards the people who had guns in the first place. And that's not going to be a good situation. And so those people lost their jobs. They got fired. And so those people were like on an edge. That crowd of people was like a powder keg that was about to explode. And so the Pinkertons just showed up with like a bunch of rifles, and then somebody shot. Nobody knows who fired the first shot, and it just turned into a massacre of everyone shooting at each other. And so that's really one of the worst things the Pinkertons did. They
just showed that on the History Channel documentary.
Yeah, it was the Pennsylvania massacre. I'm trying to remember what it was called. I'd have to look it up. The event, what happened.
I know they showed the massacre and the men that built America, but they didn't show the other guys with guns. I know they showed
it was called the Homestead Strike. Okay, that's what it was. It was the Homestead Strike. It happened 6 years before Red Dead Redemption 2. It happened in 1892 also. Not everything is about money. I don't understand why gaming companies doing this, and it continues to get worse. We know why the old Rockstar crew left. Yeah, I think it's the division and the direction was just not there anymore. Thank you, Alize.
Hey, Pro.
Hang on. Let me just answer these questions. Which GTA 5 wanted level theme you like, Professional? My favorite is the prologue. I don't know if I really ever paid attention to wanted level themes. I think I liked a lot of the GTA 5's, like, soundtrack, like in the background, like when the cops are after you. It does have some pretty good soundtrack. But basically, for people that don't know what I'm talking about, the reason that the Pinkertons are actually out in the Wild West, they were a real-life group. The reason they were out in the Wild West is because they originally were on the East Coast and in Chicago. So they were in like cities like New York and Chicago, and they got chased out of New York and Chicago by the angry people. And so there was laws that banned them from working in those places anymore. And so they wanted to work out in the Wild West because there was no there was very little government regulation out here. And so they went to the Wild West, and they worked in the Wild West protecting banks, railroads, hunting outlaws and stuff like that. But the Homestead Strike, that was the worst thing the Pinkertons did. And how many people died during the Homestead Strike? I'd have to look at this. Okay, so during the Homestead Strike, it was that, okay, so about 7 workers died, and 11 were injured, and between 3 to 8 Pinkertons were killed. So basically, what happened was there was a guy called Andrew Carnegie, and Andrew Carnegie was based on he's based on Leviticus Cornwall in Red Dead Redemption 2. So in Red Dead Redemption 2, Leviticus Cornwall is the richest man in America. And he's based on Andrew Carnegie, who was the richest man of America in this exact same time in 1898. And so both Andrew Carnegie and Leviticus Cornwall were rail giants. They both ran railroads. They both, they both had coal mines. Both Andrew Carnegie and Leviticus Cornwall ran coal mines. I don't know if they mentioned whether Leviticus Cornwall was into steel, but Andrew Carnegie made the most of his money from steel. You notice the name Carnegie and Cornwall. And also, the really creepy thing is, go and look up a picture on Google of what Andrew Carnegie looks like. And he looks just like Leviticus Cornwall. He's like he was put in the game. He looks just like him. It's a bit creepy. Our fanfic series
had like a bunch of stuff.
Overdrive is about two street racing gangs, the SD, and the Fast Six, my OCs, becoming allies and doing crazy jobs in Las Vegas, Nevada. Is this like, this is like a book that you're writing? Like a comic? Okay, let me see where I'm on the map. Is somebody's like... I hear like a little background noise from somebody. Is that like a fan or something?
Oh, that's my mom, sorry.
Oh, are you able to lower that? Oh, well, fan or...
Yeah, she's like a little fan next to me. I just mute my mic.
Alright. So, basically what happened was, Andrew Carnegie... There was a super chat. I'm sorry if I missed the alien. You wouldn't want a G Fuel can? You monster. Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't like energy drinks. I think they're very unhealthy for you. But okay. Now, what I was saying, what I was saying earlier is that, Andrew Carnegie, had a big steel mill in Homestead, Pennsylvania. That's where the Homestead Strike happened. And so this is the worst thing the Pinkertons did. Now, what ended up happening is that there was, the workers there were under a contract, and there was, like, a union that represented them. And the union that represented them was the, was this the Knights of Labor? I think that's what it was. But basically what happened was the contract had expired. And so the contract had set wages, so, like, it had a specific wage that was set for the workers. And when the new contract expired... Carnegie did not want to honor the old contract. The union wanted the new contract to go through. Carnegie didn't want to honor the old contract, and so Carnegie was going to pay them less. And so these people were not making a lot of money already. You got these people were working 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts with no breaks in these factories, and they were barely making enough money to get by. And so now their company had cut their wages. And so what happened was the workers went on strike. And what ended up happening was that Carnegie brought this guy called Frick in, one of his guys, to end the strike. Now, Frick's Frick was a massive scumbag. Now, Frick's solution, like that whole thing could have been de-escalated. The whole Homestead Strike could have easily been de-escalated if Carnegie would have just honored the old contract. If he would have just said we're gonna pay you guys what we've been paying you guys before and just honored the previous wages, the whole thing could have been avoided. But instead, he brought in Frick, and Frick's solution to end the strike is he brought in strike bearers. Now, strike bearers are people that are brought in when there's a strike, and they're people that are gonna work for less than the workers. So basically he brought replacements, and he fired all the people that were striking. And so these are thousands of people that just lost their job. This was like a massive steel plant. And so the Pinkertons were brought in to enforce and protect the factories. And they were brought in to protect the strike bearers. What ended up happening is the workers got really angry, really mad, and they took over the factory. They kicked the Pinkertons out, they took over the factory, they had guns, so it wasn't that the workers just ran in. They had guns and they took over the factory by force. And I don't necessarily think that was the right thing to do, but I understand why the workers were pissed off in that situation. The whole thing could have been avoided if Carnegie would have just negotiated with them. And
not only that, but people died in that factory.
Yes. Yeah, so people ended up dying. And what ended up happening is Carnegie, instead of, he still had plenty of time to negotiate. Nobody was dead yet, but he still had plenty of time to negotiate. And just the whole thing could have easily been diffused if he just honored the contract. But he didn't do that. And instead, the factory was like on the edge of the water. And so what the Pinkertons did was they took a bunch of barges. And they had like 300 agents. And so 300 Pinkerton agents with lever-action rifles went on the barges towards the factory. And the workers saw the barges coming. They started shouting, and then what happened was the workers all went on the beach with guns pointing at the barges. And then the Pinkertons had guns pointing at the beach. And so somebody fired, nobody knows exactly who fired, and it turned into a bloodbath. And what ended up happening was 300 Pinkerton agents were captured, And it's the Pinkerton agents who got captured were very lucky the workers didn't kill them, because those workers were really set off. But the workers held the Pinkertons hostage, and then the U.S. military had to come in. And when the military came in, the workers thought that the military was going to take their side, but instead the military took the Pinkerton side. And what ended up happening was the workers, the leaders of the strike, were put on trial. I think the leaders of the strike were acquitted. I could be wrong on that. But the Pinkertons were also put on trial. And the Pinkertons were cleared of all wrongdoing of that. And so they were let go. They didn't face any charges for the workers that they shot. To be fair, the workers were armed also, but the Pinkertons instigated the whole conflict. By them being there, sending guys in with rifles to try to defuse an angry crowd is not the right way to solve it. You try to negotiate with people from a peaceful point of view, not with, guns towards people who have guns back. But that's how the Frick tried to handle the whole thing. And what ended up happening is, even though the Pinkertons were acquitted and they didn't suffer any penalties for that, it was the beginning of the end for them, because the media published that story, and so people got really, really pissed off when they read those stories about what had happened. And so the public was outraged at the Pinkertons. Like, the public completely turned against them. Well, the public never really was on their side, but now the public was 100% against them. And the only people who supported the Pinkertons were the wealthy, rich, elite, industrialists, like the big-time factory owners. Not even, like, the regular rich guy was, like, a supporter of the Pinkertons. It was, like, the big industrialists, like, the big elites that you can think of, like, the billionaires at the time, were the people who were in the, who had supported the Pinkertons. And so what ended up happening is the elections were coming up. And the government knew that any government agency that employed the Pinkertons was going to be in trouble. Any politician who employed the Pinkertons for jobs was going to be in trouble during the election. And so what politicians did was they passed anti-Pinkerton laws. And it basically kicked the Pinkertons out of a lot of states. Like, the state of Ohio was one of the first places that banned the Pinkertons. Like, Ohio completely permanently banned the Pinkertons from working in Ohio. So they were completely kicked out. And the Pinkertons were also banned from any federal work. So they were banned from ever working for the federal government again. The federal government would never do business with the Pinkertons again. And but the thing is, there was a loophole in this law. Even though the federal government was prohibited from working with the Pinkertons, it didn't stop state governments and local governments from working with the Pinkertons. And that's exactly why the Pinkertons went out to the Wild West. They went out to the Wild West because they were chased out of the big cities by the angry people. So they went out to the Wild West. And so these are not good guys. Like, people look at the Pinkertons and they think they're good guys. They think, these are the cops and stuff like that. They're not cops. They're private cops. Basically, think of a police officer that's working for a giant corporation. That's what the Pinkertons are. They're not, a public servant. They're cops that work for the wealthy elites. That's pretty much what they are. They enforce the law on behalf of the wealthy elites. They're not there to enforce the law for the common man. The common man that gets wronged by a criminal. They don't care about you. They're there to protect the assets of the really rich and powerful elite. Okay, I'll see you. But that's what the Pinkertons were for, The Pinkertons had a very nasty reputation. In New York, for instance, what they would do is they would infiltrate, like, unions, and they would pretend to be union members. And so what they would do is they would write down the names of all the union members, and then what they would do is they would report that to the factory boss, and everybody would get fired that was in the union. That's what the Pinkertons would do. The Pinkertons were also brought in to end several strikes. They would come in with lever-action rifles a lot of times. They would tell you to get back to work. If you didn't listen to them, they would, hit you with the stock on your head with the gun. They sometimes might even kill you and get away with it. So that's like, they were not good people. They were very dishonorable. They were bad people. And so, the way they were portrayed in Red Dead Redemption 2, I thought that was actually historically accurate, the way they were portrayed. They were not good guys. They were very corrupt. They were very dishonest, and they worked for the wealthy elites. And the way they portrayed it with Cornwall, working for them, that was really well. The problem is, a lot of people, when they play Red Dead Redemption 2, they think the Pinkertons are cops, which they're not. They're a private corporation. That's pretty much what they are. And so, you have a lot of you have like a lot of really dumb people that they think that, and it's not to get into politics or anything like that, but you have a lot of really dumb people that think that it's a good idea to privatize the police. They think that the police should be privatized, and I'm telling you that if you privatize the police, that will be a complete disaster. The police isn't perfect. They make mistakes. Sometimes they do bad things, but it's important that we hold them accountable when they do bad things, and we prosecute the bad cops. But most cops are good people, but when they're public, when they're government, they work for everyone. But when they're private, they're only going to work for the people that pay them. And so we've had an experiment. We've tried to have private police in the past. It was called the Pinkertons, and it was a complete failure. And so that's basically the history of the Pinkertons. If you want to know how ruthless the Pinkertons actually were, they were trying to get a bounty on Jesse James. So people know who Jesse James is, the famous outlaw. The Pinkertons were trying to claim his bounty. And so what the Pinkertons did was they went to Jesse James's mom's house, and they were trying to find Jesse. And his mom told them that Jesse's not here, that she hadn't seen him in some time, which he was telling the truth. He was not hiding Jesse or anything like that. She didn't know where he was. And so the Pinkertons, you know, had their talk over. They left the house. After they left the house, they took a dynamite, lit it up, and threw it in the window of Jesse James's mom's house. And do you know what that did? The explosion blew off her arm. She was permanently decapitated. She lost her arm, and they killed Jesse James's 8-year-old brother. That's literally what they did. They were completely innocent. They had nothing to do with that. But just because they were related to an outlaw, the Pinkertons didn't care if they were related to an outlaw. So that's the type of people the Pinkertons were. That's like how brutal they were. And so that was like, even if Arthur had taken their deal, they probably would have screwed him over anyways. So I don't trust them at all. They're very untrustworthy people. So that's just it about them. Let me look at some of the comments I missed here. Thank you, Purple Haze. Thanks, man. Thank you for the super chats. Thanks, man. Could you get GTA San Andreas the Collector's Edition and do an unboxing? That's the best GTA Collector's Edition, in my opinion. What is in the GTA San Andreas Collector's Edition? If I find one, I could definitely do a unboxing. I could do that. Thank you, David. Oh, I'm using explosive rounds? What? I didn't even realize it. Okay, I can't aim like this. I can aim much better in first person. See, I go into first person with a bolt-action rifle and I can kill them all, but third person is just something else. Yeah, gotten much better in first person with this rifle. Got them all. And the thing, what people get wrong about snipers is that you don't have to have a scope to be a sniper. That's what people don't realize. I think that all snipers have scopes. Okay, there's the target. Yeah, I don't even care about shooting the horse. I just can't stand when enemies do that. Like, and the thing is, you notice how surprised they are when they shoot their horse? Like, they're so surprised that you just shot their horse. It's like, what do you expect them to do? Like, you're constantly moving around on your horse and shooting at people. So that's what the Pinkertons are, a parody of the people. I'm Red Dead Redemption 2. Well, they were a real group though, Alizé. The guy in BioShock is a Pinkerton agent. The guy in the BioShock in the BioShock Infinite, what's it called?
Hijo de la chingada.
It's important to note, a lot of the Pinkertons never even had proper police training. That's also another thing that's scary about them. So they didn't even know proper police procedure. Are you gonna, keep up the good work, Pro. Love the passion and commitment you put into your videos and viewers. Thank you, Twisted, Zoid. Thanks, man. I do appreciate it, man. Thank you. $30 super chat from Twisted. Thank you. Thanks, Twisted. Thanks, man. Are you gonna play the Max Payne series? Yeah, I played Max Payne 3 before, but I could play them again. Thank you, Unknown. 98, thanks, man. This is my favorite Red Dead Redemption 2 theme. Yeah, the game has some pretty good, one. I think my favorite is John Marston's theme. I know it comes with a Los Santos hat and a can of spray paint. I'd have to see if, that's probably rare to find, but I have to see if I can find one. Thank you, David.
Carajo.
Hi, Pro. I just want to say that I really like, looking up to you. You have a strong mentality, unlike mine. Your live streams are like therapy. We're very similar to each other, by the way. Thank you, Lonely Mobster. Thanks, man. That means a lot to me. What currency is that? I don't think I've ever seen that currency before. RSD? Thank you, man, for the super chat. I do appreciate it. Thanks, man. In World War I, they didn't have scopes. Half true. Some snipers did have scopes, some didn't. You know, scopes were just being invented around that time. But,
Get these damn ropes off me!
Let me see, did I miss any chats? Super chats? I think I got everyone. I'm sorry if I ever like miss a comment. I'm not doing it on purpose. I just sometimes talk a lot, and it's well, now it's night, but it was a bit of afternoon when I started. Oh wait, did he got away? Okay, I wasn't even paying attention.
No chingas! Cut me free, and I might not kill you.
Hey, Pro, let's say you're a Rockstar and Ryder decides to leave midway into the making of San Andreas. What would you have done instead to kill off the character? Well, I would have tried to work with the actor. Tried to see, what I could do to get him to stay. Ow, oh, damn. Hey, Mr. Waifu. Well, doing like a grief or fail video would be like a little hard for me to do because I don't I don't really play public sessions that much anymore.
Thank you kindly. This one will keep us up.
What would make you stop playing Red Dead Online? Nothing really. I like this game and I like streaming this game, and I'll tell you, playing this game by yourself is really boring. But like playing it with friends is somewhat fun, in a posse. And what I'll tell you is, what I like doing in Red Dead Online is I like, when I do these streams are like really chill. It's like, it's a different environment than like GTA. Like, it's like, a lot slower paced, and like we're able to chill and hang out, and I'm able to read comments. And like a lot of people that watch my Red Dead streams aren't even into Red Dead Online. They just, watch my streams just to, hear me talk, and they like, when I talk about certain things, and they also are here to answer questions because they know that I reply to a lot of questions. Like I reply to a lot of comments. I can't reply to every comment, obviously, but I try my best to reply to a lot of comments. Let's do, I'm gonna go to Coulter here. Heard of Volition becoming part of Gearbox? Yes. So now, let me ask you this. It's, what is it? Gearbox is owned by Take-Two Interactive, right? Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And so that means that now technically Take-Two has the rights to Saints Row. Am I right on that? So that is, that's pretty much, I think that the reasoning for purchasing that might be because to make sure that Saints Row is never a threat to Grand Theft Auto again. I think that's what it ultimately might be about. My favorite Battlefield game, Battlefield 1. I just like the World War I setting a lot. Hey, Pro and everyone else, have a good weekend. Thank you, Jimmy. Thanks, man. Oh, it's Serbian dinner. Oh, okay. But thank you, Natsu and Jimmy. Thank you guys for the super chats. I do appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Since you're up here, how about doing me a favor? say you're going to do something, you get it done.
Can't talk. I can't talk to Flocka. What? What?
Come on, work for me.
I'm trying to, but you're not. It's glitching out. Okay, there we go. The boat theft. We'll do that. How do you realistically see Saints Row even turning out in the future? We already know Saints Row the third, Saints Row reboot done goofed it. So I'm curious, what do you think Saints Row reboot 2 might be about? That's if we even get a Saints Row reboot 2. Thank you, Morgan. But what I will say about this, Morgan, here's what I'll say about that. Is when it comes to Saints Row, because Gearbox, can somebody confirm that to me? Gearbox is owned by Take-Two, right? It's if it's owned by Take-Two, then we might never see another Saints Row again. And they were doing that primarily just so it doesn't interfere with Grand Theft Auto.
Damn it.
I don't have a Facebook or Instagram. If Twitter gets shut down, I don't care if Twitter gets shut down. Honest, I don't. I really don't. I don't care about most of the stuff that goes on there. Really, I don't. You know, it's and I don't see the big deal personally in it. Battlefield game is Battlefield 1. Yeah, Reddit Online doesn't get any more updates. You know about Psychopaths? Have you ever watched the movie American Psycho? Actually, no, I have not. Bully Maguire joke of the day. Hey, Pro, I'll be doing the Bully Maguire dance ever since Volition goes bankrupt. You missed my chat anyway, Pro. Oh, did you make a super chat, Isaiah? If you did, I'm really sorry. I'm not trying to ignore anyone. Just oh, your comment. I see it earlier. Okay. Is that a bad thing? Now that they're owned by Take-Two? Yes, it's a really bad thing. Because that basically means that we're never gonna see any kind of competition to GTA now. They're not gonna allow Saints Row, like. Honestly, like, do you know what the best thing that Volition could really do at this point to save themselves? The best thing they could have done is to start working on a Saints Row 2 remake. Make a Saints Row 2 remake, and really put it out, like, you know, a whole new engine, everything like that, no cartoony feel to it. You have the dark, like, gritty feel that Saints Row 2 had. You know, release the Saints Row 2 remake, maybe make it like $40 or $30, and, you know, that would sell, it would do really well. And then what happens is, you know, after that, if that sells, like, really well, then, like, tell people that you apologize for the state of Saints Row, you know, the reboot cringe, and that you're making, like, another reboot now, and that you're actually, like, you know, you're actually going back to, like, the gangster, you know, style and everything like that. That's what they could do to save themselves. But now, because Take-Two owns it now, you're never going to see something like that. You're never going to see, like, you know, a Saints Row 2 remake or anything like that. It's because the reason that I think, one of the reasons I think Gearbox acquired it is so that they don't have to worry about Saints Row anymore, because Saints Row could be a possible competitor to them in the future. Now it's not a competitor because of just that state of that game. What I'm saying is, if they ever went back to their roots, they could very well be a competitor if they tried. They would have to put effort in. They would have to, you know, do a much serious storyline and actual gangs, but there's possible.
Another Watch Dogs game could possibly.
Gearbox is owned by Embracer Group, not Take-Two, is it? Let me see here. I'm gonna see this. Let's see. Gearbox. I might be getting it wrong. If I'm getting it wrong, I'm sorry. Then let's see here. Owner Embracer Group. Okay, so it looks like it's not Take-Two, is it? Because I thought that Take-Two was involved in the Borderlands games. Isn't that what Gearbox does? They're the Borderlands people, right? But if I made a mistake, then I'm sorry, guys, about that.
Yeah, because Gearbox is they work with 2K, and 2K is owned by Take-Two.
Oh, okay, that's what I was thinking then. Okay, so if they're not owned by Take-Two, that's better. And maybe having a different publisher, maybe that will, like, you know, change their... Maybe it will be a good thing in the end, because maybe they'll actually change their direction and stuff like that.
Yeah, I gotta say, Deep Silver has done some pretty scummy stuff, which is owned by Koch Media, which is what owned the Saints Row, which is what owned Saints Row as well. So maybe that's part of why Saints Row got messed up.
Imagine that we somehow convinced, like, Elon Musk to, like, buy, like, you know, Gearbox and then buy Volition, and he's gonna come in and just try to turn the Saints Row games around. You know, that'd be ridiculous. But they need to have some serious changes at that studio, and like and they need to change you know, the direction they're going in, because the Saints Row reboot was a disaster. Can I describe my upbringing in Queens? Thank you, Boombox Guru. I'll tell you this, I enjoyed my upbringing in Queens a bit more than I enjoyed my upbringing in Long Island. I did. Because when I was 13, I lived in Queens up until I was 13 years old. And then after when I was 13, we moved to Long Island, which is like the suburbs outside of, like, you know, the city. And I liked Queens a bit better, because Queens, it was just, Queens, it was like, whenever I needed to, like, go somewhere in Queens, I could just walk, you know, pretty much wherever I wanted to walk to. But in Long Island, I needed my parents to drive me, because there's just houses and houses for miles, and it was just hard to get to any, like, hard to get to any store, so there's really no way for me as a kid to get to those places and stuff like that, so I constantly had to ask my parents to drive me around, to go to those places. But yeah, that was, you know, that was that, but, you know, I would say I had, like, you know, I had some really good friends in Queens, but most of my friends ended up moving away, too, so they didn't really end up staying in New York, but, yeah. I'll tell you, the one thing I didn't miss about Queens, though, is the noise, because it got really loud at times. Long Island didn't really have that noise problem, but it did have you know, very far distances to get to places. Yeah, I've gotten really good at this bolt-action rifle.
I gotta say, the canoes are very underrated in this game. They're pretty...
Well, I don't understand why is there never, like, a canoe option that you could buy in this game and, like, spawn it, like, at the water or something like that? Why was that never in this game?
Yeah, I don't know why. They should have made it an option. These things actually, they control pretty well, I gotta say. They're not that slow, which is,
Okay, let's down to this place here.
There we go. Delivered.
Ah, man, this...
It's over, cocksucker.
Are you getting stuck on little rocks?
No, I'm just... There's this annoying enemy.
I almost got stuck on a rock and I thought it was going to destroy the canoe.
Okay. I'll look at the chat in just one moment, guys. Just trying to get this there, down the river. Okay, there we go. Let me look at the chat here. I think 171 can definitely compete with GTA in the future. I agree with you, Morgan. I don't think, it's going to sell as much as GTA, obviously, but I think it's a good start. And they might develop a series of this in the future, like, years going in the future. So I think that's definitely like a, I hope that definitely happens. Did you see Gilly's review on the Saints Row reboot? I like when he said, haha, woke game, garbage. Well, thank you for the super chat, Mario. No, I didn't see Gilly's review. I did see Dark Space's review, and I saw Angry Joe's review. But I should watch Gilly's review. I haven't seen that one. I will tell you, though, I've, in my video, like, I rant about, like, I basically call them, in my review, I basically say, this game is what happens when Twitter users become gangsters. That's basically what I said when I described the Saints Row reboot in my review. So that's, like,
What would you do if something like that actually happened in real life? A bunch of Twitter users became gangsters.
Nah, well...
What's your problem?
In my opinion, I wish Rockstar did more of Agent Jones, the FIB agent that calls Johnny. Maybe Jones could have been corrupt like Francis or Ray from GTA 3, who would come down on the Lost MC if Johnny didn't cooperate. Oh yeah, something like a corrupt cop storyline. Okay. Yeah, I guess you're right on that, Alien. Let's see here. Let's see, where are we gonna go to? What city? Go to Rhodes. Remember that guy calls you like a few times, he tells you that somebody's cooperating, and,
I wish GTA did a protagonist where they're like an undercover cop like Wei Shen.
I don't think that would really work. Because in the GTA games, you're always like a criminal. And so, like, being an undercover cop means you can't do certain things. And so that would just, I don't think that would, like, you wouldn't be able to, like, do crazy, like, crimes and stuff like that, necessarily, so... Hey, Professional, I bought Scarface The World Is Yours on the original Xbox, and I don't know where to start. I mean, you could use my videos as a guide. You want to utilize the businesses, the fronts, as much as possible when you're moving coke around in that game. And when you have it at your warehouses, you want to try not to fail, because if you don't fail and you do it well, you get a bonus each time, and that bonus stacks each time you do it more and more. My favorite 3D era GTA game, Vice City. My favorite HD era GTA game would be GTA 4.
I'm still in the lobby. I just don't know if you want to help me sell my trade or not, or what.
Putin has to go. Oh, I agree with you. That guy's just a psycho. What about Troy in Saints Row? He was in undercover. Yeah, but I mean, Troy. I guess, but it wouldn't really. I don't think it would really work, because if you're like an undercover cop, you're not gonna build like a criminal empire and stuff like that, because your goal is gonna be to bring the whole thing down. So I don't think it would work in the end.
What if you're a crooked cop?
That still wouldn't work. Like, how would a corrupt cop manage like a criminal empire? Unless it's something like Tenpenny, where they're managing it from like the side.
Yeah,
but
like
it's,
like a privatized police force. Like, what if you actually make your own privatized police force and stuff, like the Pinkertons, like you were talking earlier?
I don't know. I don't know if that would necessarily work.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Also,
I guess that could be used for
I'll tell you this. I can't stand corrupt cops, and corrupt cops are literally, you know, some of the worst people out there. They're even worse a lot of times than the actual gangsters. They are. And so it's like, with like a corrupt cop, it's like, you know, you have like a gangster is somebody that, like, you know, is dishonest for money. But you have somebody that's, a corrupt cop is somebody that chose an honest profession to be dishonest, to abuse it, to be dishonest for money. That's what a corrupt cop is, and corrupt cop is pretty much a gangster with a badge when you think about it. So it's like, a lot of times it's actually, it would actually be less dangerous to deal with actual gangsters than it would be to deal with corrupt cops. So it's sometimes they're even worse than the gangsters.
I was wondering when you were going to get here. This is a good batch, of course. They are all good batches, but this one is superior, eh?
I'm not ignoring you, Wookiees. There's a lot of people that are posting.
And most important, they will pay
In my
for
Saints
it
Row
too.
fiction, my boss's father was an undercover cop who found the Saints with Julius in order to bring down the rest of the gangs. Oh, so something like Troy's backstory, then, Afina. What's good, everyone? I'm doing good, Jimmy. How are you?
I just like I'm still in the lobby. I noticed my radio was ready to go. I don't know if you want to do it or not.
You're in the lobby?
Oh yeah, I'm still in the lobby.
Okay,
yeah.
after I deliver this, then we can help you with yours.
Okay.
Who's the worst law enforcer, second to Frank Tenpenny? Francis, Machowski, Pulaski, or Haynes? The worst one? Probably I'd say Pulaski. Yeah, probably because his whole corruption with Tenpenny had like cost like hundreds of people their lives with all the gang wars and the drug overdoses. Yeah, so I'd say Pulaski.
The Polish lapdog. That's what he was called.
Yeah, our Big Smoke said that. But I'm Polish, and like, you know, I wasn't even really offended by that. I thought it was kind of funny what Big Smoke, you know, called Pulaski, but it was yeah, but Pulaski is one of the few Polish characters that you see in like a GTA game. The other Polish characters in like GTA games, you have Pulaski, you have Ray Machowski in GTA 3, you have Ron Jankowski in GTA 5. You got, who else do you got? Ron, Pulaski, Ray, Machowski. Is there anyone else? There's a few Polish characters I know in like games, in GTA games.
Yeah, so about the roadblock, yeah, I was going towards you guys, and I guess the Krugers triggered me, and I shot in, and the regular agents just shooting at me.
Okay, Brandon, I guess we'll help you out now.
Okay. Yeah, just saying, like...
Oh yeah, Brandon, can you please send me an invite to your posse as well, please? It's
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, I was hunting the coming toward you guys, and
Where's your camp, Brandon?
Cougar came right at me, and when I shot the Cougar there, I guess the agent was shooting at me, so I guess it triggered the checkpoint.
Christmas is ruined forever because Rockstar shut down GTA 5 Online on PS3 1 week before the holidays have been on GTA 5 Online PS3 since 2013. November, 150 days played, 3,000 hours, rank 606. Yeah. It was unfortunate they shut it down, and they didn't even shut down GTA 4's like servers. So I just find it always a bit weird. Like, what was the harm in letting it just continue running? Pro, how would the Saints Row 2 boss react if they met the reboot Saints? I don't think it would go well.
One thing I missed about GTA 4's online was how you can make the character talk.
Okay.
The same goes for Red Dead Redemption 1.
So, shout out to Fernando, great moderator. Thank you, Purple Heights, and thank you, Fernando, for moderating my channel. I'm gonna make a few pierogies. Okay, Elliot. Okay, sell whenever you're ready.
Whoa. You guys are all the way in like the west side of New Austin.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting chased by a cougar.
Will Red Dead Online get snow this year? Honestly, I would not be surprised if it doesn't even get it. I remember they had snow in April of like, was it April of 2020 or April of 2021, and then they didn't have it anymore. They just, forgot about it. It was like a little prank for like, April Fools. Guarma DLC, yeah, that would have been good.
A Gorma pirate themed DLC.
What's your opinion on pot, Pro? You're asking me about marijuana? Well, I don't like to get into these things because it's just a controversial topic, but my opinions would not necessarily be so popular. Like, I would say that my view on it would not be what the majority of people align with it, but it's fine. It's it's my view. But what I will say is that I don't smoke, nor do I have any intention of ever smoking. But what I will say about that is that there's pros and cons to it. But like when I see people on like the side of like that they want legalization and they act like it's all pros and there's no cons, this is not true. There's cons to it, and there's problems that it would also cause as well if it was legalized. So it's not just all pros. There's issues, but it can be debated. What I will say is, there are certain studies that show that, like, people that smoke marijuana are more likely to use other, dangerous drugs because it might be the same person that's selling them the marijuana might be offering the other dangerous drugs. There's also some studies done, which, this is the scariest part about it, that people that smoke like a lot of marijuana, that they have like a higher chance of developing schizophrenia later in life. This was like actual studies that were done. And I remember when I was studying law enforcement, my teacher, who's like been a police officer, a detective for like 30-something years, and he was telling the class about this, and they were in complete disbelief, just arguing with him about it. But he he presented the facts and everything like that, and he talked about it. But what I will what I will say about it is ultimately my opinion on it. Do I think it should be legalized or not? I think it should be left up to the voters. I think it should be done at a referendum. Just do it as a referendum and let people decide on it if they if they want to have it legalized or not. So that's just it. If they want it legalized, okay. If they don't want it legalized, then okay. But I think it should ultimately be up to the voters. That's just what I think. They should be the ones to decide stuff like that.
Yeah, here in Canada, it's like legalized like countrywide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never actually smoke or drink.
Yeah. What I will say though is like, you know, one thing that weed is way too glorified. Exactly, Bunny. I agree with you 100% on that. And that's what I don't understand. It was just I cannot like it's just so weird because it's like weed has like an entire culture around it. Like it's like, you know, alcohol doesn't, you know, I guess has some cultural things, but doesn't have something like weed. Like it is like in cigarettes, you know, smoking cigarettes doesn't have a culture around it. But it's like, you know, marijuana for some reason does. It has like a whole culture. People celebrate like a holiday for it. And then they like, you know, they dress up in like, you know, the weed symbol on their shirts and everything, hats, and, you know, they, you know, talk about it constantly. And so that's just personally my opinion. I don't like the culture on it. I find it personally annoying. And so that's just what I don't like. But what I will say is, you know, you know, if it's legalized, you know, if it's legalized, I think it should be up to the vote. And so I'll respect whatever the outcome is, whether it's you know, to make it legal or make it illegal, you know, whatever the voters decided. I would support a nationwide referendum on it. But I think that's the best way to solve it, is have like a nationwide referendum, all 50 states, and have everybody just vote on it. Do you want this legalized or not? And that's like, you know, I think that's like probably the best way to end that whole, the whole argument. But what I will say though is what I cannot stand is when people like, you know, smoke that stuff and then other people have to inhale that garbage. I cannot. It's the same thing with cigarettes. So it's not just it's just I can't stand it. I'm so happy it doesn't happen on my floor, but like on other floors, like basically there's this old woman that I met at the gym in my apartment complex, right? And so I talked to her about a few things, and so she has no idea really about computers. And so she had a few problems with her laptop, right? And so she asked me if I could fix, like, she had some viruses and stuff, if I could fix that on her laptop. And so I said, okay, this is like last year. And so I went, you know, I went to the, because my apartment building is like massive, it's huge. It has like, you know, it has like, I think it's like over 200 units or something like that. But it's, so I went to like the other side of the building, I went to her floor, and when I went to her floor, I walked like through the floor, I could smell that garbage. Like, it was all over the floor. I could smell it. It was coming from underneath people's doors and stuff like that. And so it was like, she obviously doesn't do it, and she complained to me even about it. She said that I asked her about the smell, and she says it's like this every week. People are constantly smoking pot, and the smell is just so annoying. It's so stupid. And so that's my personal problem with it. You know, if it's legal, if it's legalized and it's fine and it's legal, okay. But if it is legal and the government decides to make it legal, then people should keep it as far away from me and other people, because I don't want to inhale that garbage, and neither do my friends or my family want to, you know, smell that garbage or any of that other stuff around us. And so that's what personally gets me pissed off and what gets me irritated is, you know, you want to smoke on your own time if it's legal, you know, go ahead. But, you know, I don't have to inhale that garbage. You know, if I'm walking like down the hallway in like my apartment building, I'm walking to my apartment, I should not have to be smelling that stuff in the hallway. And so it's the exact, I have the exact same view when it comes to cigarettes. If I was smelling cigarettes when I was walking down the hallway, I'd feel the exact same way about it. So that's, you know, that's ultimately my position on marijuana, is I think that it should be up to the government, up to the people to decide, you know, make it a referendum and they vote. And if they want to make it legalized, then make it legalized. If they don't want to make it, you know, legal, that's up to the voters to decide. But, you know, when people say all the time that there's only pros and there's no cons, there's no bad things about making it legalized, that's not true. There certainly are some pros, there certainly are some benefits I could see of making it legal, but then there's also, like, you know, there's also bad things that can happen when you make it illegal. And I don't think people talk about the bad things as much. I know how the vast majority of the public feels. The vast majority of the public wants it legalized. I know how people think. And so if it went to a referendum, it probably would be voted to be legalized. But, you know, that's my personal, you know, problems with it, what I outlined before. And so that's that. You know, I believe that, you know, if you are smoking something, you know, whether that's cigarettes or marijuana, depending on if it's legal, and that crap goes from your property onto somebody else's, and the neighbor refuses to take responsibility for that, I think there should be fines for that. There should be punishments for that, personally. Because, you know, you have a right to smoke cigarettes in this country, but you don't have a right to, you know, to blow that crap onto somebody else's property and have somebody else, like, inhale that. There's a reason that you can't smoke cigarettes in a lot of public places, because people don't want to inhale that garbage. So that's what it is.
Cigarettes make me really sick.
Yeah, cigarettes gave me a headache too. Like, I never smoked cigarettes, but I've been like around a lot of people that smoked cigarettes in the past as I was a kid, and I inhaled that garbage a lot of times. It would give me headaches. It would not. It wouldn't be good. I hope it didn't give me any permanent damage, but it's just you know, that if somebody wants to smoke cigarettes, you know, go right ahead. It's your choice, it's your health, but, you know, just keep it away from me, because I don't want to inhale it. That's just, you know, my view on it. I'm not even gonna judge somebody if they smoke cigarettes. I'm not like, you know, like that. Just my personal problem is I just don't like it when I have to inhale the garbage. That's just, it. Let me look at. I think I missed a bunch of comments. Let me look at what people are saying. Is it true the Volition canceled the Saints Row game that the Saints had a story in Japan? I don't know about that, but I know they canceled like one Saints Row game where you were supposed to kill Dex. It was like a mini game. Like, I think it was a mobile game. But that might be what you're thinking of, Alize. Shout out to Fernando, great moderator. Yep, he is. Purple Haze. Thank you for the super chat. We'll have to see whether Reddit Online gets snow this year. And you know what? I wish that snow was a dynamic event. Like, I wish that, like... Because, I'll tell you something. Like, the regions in this game, like New Austin and, like, New Austin and the Great Plains in this game, like, that area is, like... Texas and New Mexico. That's pretty much what that area is. Maybe parts of Arizona, too. But, like, Valentine, that area, Valentine is South Dakota and Nebraska. That's where Valentine is. So, in geography terms, for, like, the real world America. And so, like, in a place like Valentine, 100% it would snow, definitely, in the wintertime. 100%. And not only would it snow, but it would be very cold in, like, an area like Valentine in the wintertime. And so I don't understand why, you know, you can't have dynamic snow also in that part of the map. I'd like to see that. Hey, Pro, I think you missed my super chat. Let me see. Did I read your super chats, Alize? I think I read all of them, didn't I? Yeah, Scarface. I read yours about Scarface, and the Saints Row reboot, or not, the Saints Row canceled game. Let me see it. Hey, Pro, I don't know if you have access to a PS2, but I think you'd love the True Crime game series. Open world crime games, and you play as a cop. I heard about that series. I should give that series a try one day. I should,
True Crime's owned by Activision.
I gotta look at that, give that game a try one day. I could do a playthrough of it. Thank you, Paul. Do I think the British Empire did more bad than good? Oh, that's like, you know, that's a subject that is a bit controversial. You know, I would say that there was some positive things, but there was, probably the best thing the British Empire probably did throughout their history is they were like the first Western civilization to end slavery. So it was Britain, or at least one of the first civilizations. It was 1830 something, I think it was. So that's one of the good things that the British Empire did. But the British Empire also did like a lot of really bad things, like a lot of the occupations, the colonialism. You know, I think that from a historical perspective, I think that empires like Spain and Russia were worse. But, that doesn't mean that the British Empire were, like, good also. So ultimately, I don't think they really had a right to be in these countries. I think that was for the people to decide on their own and their own self-determination. So that's, that's ultimately, what I think about it. Is I think, people have a right to decide whether they want to be in their country or not. And so, I'm no fan of colonialism. I hate empire in general. Like, I'm no fan of empire. I hate all empire. And so that's ultimately, like, empire is what caused World War I. So that's like, you could argue empire and monarchy is what caused World War I. So that's like, I've never been a fan of like, empire or colonialism or any of that. I think it's, personally stupid. And this idea that you're going to go into somebody else's country and like, try to, take their resources and then you pretend like you're helping them when you're not. But it's like I said, you know, there were some good things they did, but then there's a lot of really bad things. But, you know, it's, you know, you'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. But ultimately, I think there was probably more bad than good. That's just my view on it. But it's not just, you know, towards the British Empire. I just hate all empire in general. But let me look at some of the other comments here. Thank you, Edgy, for that super chat. Let's see here. You can't control what people do, bro. Actually, you can, depending on the situation. Like I said, if somebody wants to smoke cigarettes, I'm assuming this is referencing to what I said before. I believe very strongly that government should not intervene in people's personal lives. I think people should be able to do whatever they want to do in their personal lives. As long as they're not hurting anybody else, people should be able, and not breaking any laws, people should be able to do whatever they want. That's how I feel about it. And I think government should stay out of people's personal lives. I don't think government should, you know, tell people, you know, who they can and can't marry. I don't think, you know, government should, you know, get involved in people's tax lives so much either. And I think government should stay out of people's, you know, personal lives. However, though, there's also the thing that you have the freedom to do generally what you want, as long as it doesn't encroach on other people's freedoms. And so that's exactly what I'm talking about. If somebody wants to smoke, like cigarettes or something like that on their property, there's nothing that bans them from that. It's the point that when somebody is smoking cigarettes so badly that it goes from their property, the smell, and it goes onto somebody else's property, and then that person is inhaling that, and then that person's health is suffering at that point, then yes, at that point you can do something about that, and there's laws against that specifically, and so that's it. You know, if somebody wants to smoke, you know, like I said, it's my position is, you know, go ahead. It's your choice. You want to smoke cigarettes or you want to smoke marijuana. If it's legal, you know, and you want to smoke it, then, you know, go ahead. That's your choice. But I don't want to inhale that on my property. I don't want to smell that on my property. It should only be on your property, and it should not be going towards my property at all. Like, it's the same thing if you were playing music. If I was playing really loud music on my property, like I was playing it at the middle of the night, and I was playing it super loud and something like that, and people got to go to bed, and, you know, got to wake up in the morning and stuff like that, and then, you know, the neighbor complains, and I say, oh, I'm free to do whatever I want to do on my property. No. If you're interfering with somebody else's, you know, somebody else's property, and you're causing somebody else a nuisance, you don't have the freedom to do that. So that's generally what my position on that is. Like I said, hey pro, sorry that this is sort of at a topic, but out of all the old Call of Duties, Modern Warfare 1, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, who is your favorite antagonist? Why? General Shepard, Zakhaev, or Makarov? Makarov's, you know, the scariest antagonist, and he's also the most calculating. Like, Makarov is the most smartest antagonist too, so I'd say Makarov. See here, I think you'd be surprised that many stoners agree with you, bro. Very often it's like these young kids that permeate the culture and give everyone else a bad name. Sad, really. Well, it's like I said, you know, Purple. It's it's like I said, Purple. It's you know, if somebody wants to smoke, you know, keep it to your own, you know, keep it to your own property. And like the thing about it is, like, it's like those people, like when I was talking to you guys earlier about the apartment, like, you know, the apartment building. Like, let me know in the comments, like, what you guys think of that. Like, do you want to walk, like, if you live in an apartment, would you like to walk down your hallway in your apartment and just smell pot? I wouldn't. I don't want to inhale that stuff. And so if I knocked on these people's doors, like, I'm not being a Karen or anything, but I would just say, like, you know, hey, I don't care if you smoke, but, you know, I don't want to inhale this stuff when I'm going in through the hallway. And, you know, they'd probably tell me to mind my own business, you know, if I said that to them. So that's ultimately the thing. And then the thing is, though, is then you could play probably loud music back, and if they knock on your door, you tell them the same thing, mind their own business. But it's you know, that's ultimately, like, you know, that's ultimately what pisses me off is I'm a very strong advocate of personal freedom, and I believe very much in, you know, individual, you know, liberty and personal freedom, but, you know, I don't want, you know, somebody else to, like, interfere in my personal life, and that goes for, like, you know, cigarettes and other stuff like that. You know, I don't even care if my best friends like smoke cigarettes or anything like that. The only thing I care about is whether I have to inhale that stuff. If, you know, if they're like, you know, if I have like a friend who smokes cigarettes or something like that, and I invite them to like my house, you know, I'll just ask them politely, like, you know, please don't smoke on my property. I don't care if, you know, you smoke when you're home or something like that, but don't smoke here because I don't want to inhale that. So that's, you know, that's ultimately is. I don't care what people do in their personal time, but I just don't want to inhale that. That's just it. And you know, and the thing is, there's people that would say like, you know, that like like, you know, pot inhalation isn't as bad as tobacco or anything like that. I don't care. I don't care which one is worse inhaling. I don't want to inhale either of them. So I don't want to like, you know, walk down the hallway and smell cigarettes, and I don't want to walk down the hallway and smell like pot. Why should I have to? You know, I pay expensive rent as it is. You know, rent keeps going up because in this economy, and so why should I also have to, you know, smell this garbage? You know, when I'm walking, like, you know, that, you know, if you really want to smoke, you know, so badly, just go to your car and, like, you know, do it there. But, like, just doing it in your apartment and then having everyone else, you know, that walks past your door having to smell, that's disgusting. So that's just, that's ultimately what I think of it, and that's my position on it. Apartheid. Oh yeah, little neutron. You're right. South Africa. You know, South Africa had a really messed up government for most of its time. You know, so very. You know, you could argue that the government of South Africa was fascist. So it was South Africa had a really messed up government for some time. So yes, you know, and that's an after effect of colonialism also. So that's like so yeah, I would agree with you there. See here. Okay, start up a posse here.
Morning, sir. Hey, move out the dang way.
Let me see here.
Jackass.
I think that generally all empires are, you know, bad, and you know, and and you know, all empires have done, like, you know, really bad things. Every single empire. But I think ultimately the word empire is bad. It's just a bad thing. You know, whether it's Russian Empire, Austrian-Hungarian Empire, German Empire, British Empire, French Empire, Spanish Empire, you know, Japanese Empire, you know, Chinese Empire. There's, like, you know, so many that you could, you know, you could keep going. But like an empire as a nation, an empire government is specifically as a government set up to take advantage and literally steal the resources of other, you know, poorer nations. An empire is a nation that exploits poorer nations that they can conquer. That's pretty much what an empire is. They're and an empire doesn't even necessarily need to have a king or a queen. A lot of people think it does. You know, a lot of times empires are also controlled by dictators. British colonialism also sort of ruined Ireland in a way. People from Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland think of each other differently at times, and there's also religious debate in Northern Ireland and how Northern Ireland is so divided over the past. Yeah, and that's like you know, that's the you know, colonialism has, like, you know, an empire have, like, destroyed, like, a lot of Africa, for instance, because if you look at Africa, Africa has, like, the weirdest borders in the world. And the reason Africa's borders are so weird is because they're so even. That's the thing about them. Is, like, if you look at the borders of, like, European countries, none of them are even. Like, they're just all squiggly, all over the place, like, they're just uneven. But if you look at Africa, they're like straight lines. A lot of the countries are straight lines, and they're just, the reason that they're like that is because those African countries used to be former colonies. And so what happened was, a lot of the empires would put people that don't like other people. So like they might have two groups of people that don't like each other, and they might put them in the same colony. And then what happens is that colony gains independence, becomes its own country, and then you have two groups of people that don't like each other, and they have a civil war, and they start fighting each other. And so that's, that was responsible for a lot of the conflicts in Africa. You had a lot of groups that didn't like each other that were stuck in the same colony, and they ended up fighting each other. And so that's like, that caused a lot of problems in Africa that's, still felt to this day. So there's that. My parents, my parents' country of Poland is, one of the few European countries that didn't engage in colonialism. We didn't engage in empire. Well, Poland did have its own empire, but, like, it was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, but that was, like, that was, like, 400 years ago. We didn't have, like, anything, like, in the 20th century or anything like that. In fact, Poland was constantly getting, like, conquered and invaded by so many people. But, I hate empire. I just don't like empire in general. I don't care whether it's like British Empire, Austrian, Hungarian, German, Russian Empire. It's all of it is just stupid. It's all of it bad. Empire is not a good, system. It's a system designed specifically to, exploit poorer countries and take advantage of them. That's what an empire is. Okay, what is this over here? Is this something I gotta dig? Okay. Let's see here, try to find this guy. But, one thing, one thing that makes me, like, really proud to be, like, Polish is, like, one thing that makes me very proud to be Polish is, like, how the Polish soldiers had, like, refused to shoot at, like, the rebels in Haiti. Like, a lot of the Polish soldiers, when they were sick, because the reason for that is because the Polish were allied with the French during the Napoleonic War, so the Polish were allies of Napoleon. And so Napoleon had sent, like, battalions of Polish soldiers to the Haiti, which was a colony of France, and the reason that Haiti was rebelling was because Napoleon had reinstated slavery. And so he sent in, like, the Polish soldiers to put it down. And so when the Polish soldiers, like, saw the Haitian rebels, they didn't want to shoot at them. They didn't want to fight them. And it was like, the Polish soldiers had, like, a complete change of heart. It was because a lot of the Polish soldiers sympathized a lot with the rebels. And, like, their country had gotten taken over and occupied by so many different empires beforehand. And so that was, like, Polish soldiers refused to, shoot at a lot of the, I'm sure there were some bad Polish soldiers, but there was, like, a lot of good Polish soldiers that refused to shoot at the rebels in Haiti. And it's one of the reasons that the Haitian Revolution was successful and why the French failed. And Haiti became an independent country. And so a lot of the Europeans were actually banished from Haiti afterwards, but the Polish were actually allowed to stay because of that, because they didn't shoot at the Haitians. And what happened was the Poles didn't have a country to go back to either. Because Poland was conquered again it was conquered by Russia, Prussia, and Austria, and so a lot of Poles ended up staying in Haiti, and so, like, there's Haitian people to this day. There really isn't a Polish community in Haiti today. It's you don't really see it, but there is there's like a lot of Haitians that might have, like, a French first name and, like, a Polish last name. So that's, like, one of the most honorable things that, like, Poland has done throughout its history is they were sent in originally to, like, stop a slave revolt, and they ended up helping the slaves gain freedom. So that's like one of the most that's one of the most honorable things that I know that Poland has done. I know Poland has done some other things, like in its medieval history. Poland has done some horrible things in its medieval history, but in its like in its more recent history, in like the last 200 years, it really hasn't, like, done as many bad things as some of these other European countries that surround them. Let me look at the chat. Agree 100%, dog. Stoners should respect others. Thank you, Purple Haze. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah. So it's ultimately, like I said, I don't care if somebody, like, smokes or something like that. Just keep it away from me. I don't want to inhale it. I had a patient in a 4-bedroom who locked himself in the bathroom to smoke weed. We had to move everyone to different rooms because of the smell. Oh my god, that's horrible, Fernando. I'm sorry about that, man. That's... can you explain what apartheid was like for South Africa and the consequences it had on the country and the rest of the world? Well, apartheid was a very, racist system. It was a system where you had the wealthy, you had the wealthy elite, like, whites that controlled the country at the expense of the black population. The black population had a very, very little say, and what I was saying, like, earlier, like, you could argue that South Africa was, like, a fascist state. Like, you could definitely make that argument for it. So it was, like, South Africa had, like, a really, really, really dark history. It's a very bad history that they have. What is this? What the...
Oh no, 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 no.
What the hell?
Rhodesia is a prime example, yes. Yes, that's that other African nation. That one, there was also, like, wealthy elite, like, Europeans and whites that would, like, rule the country, and, there was that one country, Rwanda. Rwanda was that one, yes, it was Rwanda. So Rwanda was that one country where I'm trying to remember what country was the one who occupied Rwanda, what empire it was. But I think it might have been the British. But Rwanda, you had two ethnic groups, the Tutsis, I think one was the group, and I forget the other group's name, if I'm pronouncing their names correctly. But what ended up happening is the two groups ended up fighting each other, and then I got to read up on it. I remember I read about it in college, but it was one of the groups ended up taking power and just committed, the Rwandan genocide, which is, such a horrible event in history. It's so brutal, it's so disgusting, and that was primarily you could argue that was primarily because of colonialism, because they put those two groups of people that don't like each other in the exact same country, and that was, like, an effect of that. Thank you, Purple Haze. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you again, man. Got 84% on my second psychological midterm. Oh, good job, Mr. Waifu. Thanks, man. Hoodoo and Tutsi. Okay, yes. Weed is good for the brain. I don't know where you're getting that. There's, like I said, there's studies that a lot of pot smoking can lead to schizophrenia later in life. I'd like to see what your sources on that are specifically, unless you're trolling.
You're in serious trouble when I get out of this.
I can say from experience on my end, marijuana had did more harm to me than it benefited me indirectly. The England Empire destroyed my continent. Oh,
How long should we wait for? How long should we wait?
Let's wait until 1.
Okay. Let's just relax.
I know about that, Edgy. I know about that. Algeria. Algeria was a French colony. I know about that. And there was an independence movement in Algeria, and the French didn't like that. I know about that. And the thing is, France was like a republic, so it wasn't even a dictatorship. But yet it had a massive empire too. So it was it shows you that even a republic can be or even a republic can have like an empire. And you know what I'll tell you guys is some of the one thing from history, one video game that I know that covers this is Sherlock Holmes. If you play the Testament of Sherlock Holmes, it actually covers this. The British Empire, for example, one of the worst things that they did in their history was the Opium Wars in China. That was one of the worst things they did. And with the Opium Wars in China, what basically happened was British merchants were coming into China, and they were selling opium. And the Chinese were getting addicted to it. They were getting high on it. And what ended up happening was the Chinese leadership really didn't like that, and they kicked out the British merchants. And what happened was the British Empire basically told the Chinese to let the drug dealers basically in, and the Chinese said no, and so the British attacked them, and so it was like the British ended up winning, and they forced the Chinese to allow drug dealers into their country, and the British were taking a cut from the drug dealers, from the opium. This was the British Empire that was selling drugs into China, and that's like one of the worst things that they did. And here's the crazy thing about it. While the British Empire was making money off of opium, and they were selling opium in China, but guess where opium was illegal? It was illegal in Britain. So the British Empire didn't want their own people getting addicted to opium. They didn't want their own people dying and having their lives ruined through opium. But they were perfectly fine with ruining the lives of people in China from with opium. So that was like that's one of the worst things they did. And when you look at a country like Belgium, for instance, like you think of like small Belgium and you don't think of like much, but Belgium had like one of the worst empires ever. Like the Belgian Empire in the Congo. And you had King Leopold. He was ruthless. Like, he was cruel. King Leopold was one of the most cruel monarchs in Western European history. Like, out of all the Western European monarchs, like, Leopold was one of the most brutal and one of the most ruthless monarchs ever. And, like, he killed millions of people in the Congo. Like, millions. The Belgian slavery in the Congo was, like, really bad. And it was just, so like when you look at a country like Belgium, like such a small country, and you don't think that they would be capable of something like this, being such a small nation, but they did some really horrible things in the Congo. So like a lot of these empires, did some really messed up things. And I know my country, the United States, we did, my country's like government, like our history, we had like done really messed up things to Native Americans and yeah, we did some really, there were some really bad things, like the the gold rush, for instance. Like American settlers would go on Native American reservations and they would fight them, and the U.S. government would do nothing to stop that. And yeah, there was some so my country also has some dark history. So I'm not just talking about other countries, but yeah, my country also has a bit of dark history. And then there's the Japanese Empire. The Japanese Empire, oh man, they did some really horrible things in China, and they did some really horrible things in Korea. So it's yeah.
Are you people supposed to be famous? I don't recognize you. Good money.
Yeah, even Canada has some dark.
Do you know that the samurai
well.
were once paid to guard places like Spain, Central America, and South America? That I never actually knew. That I didn't know. No country is perfect. I agree with you on that. But the thing is, though, is you know what I personally what I personally cannot stand. What personally because I'm a big historian. Like I read a lot of history, and so like what I cannot stand and what pisses me off. What really pisses me off is when people deny their history. That really pisses me off. You have people that deny like the horrible things that their countries do, and it's because they feel some kind of national pride. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with loving your country. There's nothing wrong with being proud of your country and being a patriot of your country. But you also have a responsibility to admit the horrible things that your country did. And if you're not willing to admit to the horrible things that your country did, there's nothing really to stop that from happening that again, because you have to learn from it, and you have to admit to it. Obviously, the people alive today are not responsible for what their country did hundreds of years ago, but they have a responsibility to admit what their ancestors did and and admit to what their country has done historically. So that's just that. I mean, my parents' country of Poland, like one of the worst things that Poland did in its history was probably when it invaded like Russia in the 1600s. And so it was that Russia did invade Poland later on and conquered it, but Poland also attacked Russia. before in the past, and conquered huge parts of Russia. So every country does some bad things, but people should be willing to. My point that I'm making is that people should be willing to admit to the horrible things that their country did, because every country on this planet has done horrible things. But every people should be willing to admit to the horrible things their countries did, and it's like for these people, it's like some kind of I don't get that. It's like some kind of national pride, or they would think that they feel shame, and so they make excuses. They make excuses, and they'll oftentimes blame the other side. Like when you talk about something bad in their country did, like a genocide, the people that deny it, they will oftentimes like blame the other country, and they'll say, oh, these people were bad or something like that, and they'll try to completely avoid the topic, like that. Like, just look at, modern day Turkey. Modern day Turkey, they deny, like, huge parts of the government deny the Armenian genocide. They pretend like that didn't happen. Their whole argument is the Armenians just moved. That's when they asked where the Armenians all went, they just claimed the Armenians all moved. And then modern day Japan today, they deny, like, a lot of the atrocities. They've admitted to some of the atrocities, but they deny a lot of the atrocities that their empire has committed in a lot of Asian countries that they've conquered. So there's like even governments to this day that deny like the horrible things that their country has done in the past. Okay, let me see here. Okay. Thank you for banning that racist from the chat, Fernando. Yeah. People can oftentimes debate with me, and they can argue with me, and they can even insult me, but like, I see something racist, I'm just gonna remove them from the chat right away. So thank you for the, thank you for removing them, thank you for removing them, TJ and Chas, and, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with people. I don't know why people make names like that. Thank you for dealing with it, though. I appreciate it. No, thank you, Morgan. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, I 100% agree. As an Irishman, IRA post-1960s, the president are terrorists, for example. Yeah, and the IRA do, the IRA really don't care about targeting civilians. They claim to be freedom fighters, but they target civilians. And also, the IRA has, do you know who the IRA has ties to that a lot of people don't know about? You know who's an ally of the IRA? North Korea. The North Korean government are actually allies of the IRA. A lot of people don't know that. So you see who the IRA chooses their friends. So that tells you a lot about the IRA and what kind of people they are. So that's, the North Korean government has supplied the IRA with stuff in the past. So that's, even though they're so far apart, they had connections to each other. Let me see here. Where am I gonna go? I'll go to Tumbleweed. Wasn't Derek IRA? Yes, he was. And guess who Derek was working with? He was working with a North Korean agent, too. So that's, the Australian government never denied what they did to the Native Americans. So thank you for the thank you for sponsoring my channel, Sebi. Well, I didn't know, I don't know Australian history that well, so I can't comment on that. But that's good that they don't deny their history. I was at Walmart the other day, and there was a car meet in the parking lot. These idiots sped around the entrance, and people were still shopping. Imagine if someone got hurt due to them. Yeah. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, is you have the freedom to do exact what you want, but you don't have the freedom to interfere with other people's personal lives and encroach on other people's freedoms. That's basically what, and put other people also at danger. You don't have the right to do that. Let's see, I'm gonna join poker match. I'm gonna go into game chat so I can play this poker match here. Oh, come on. Oh, don't tell me this is glitching out. Yeah, I think it's glitching out. Great, wonderful, right? Okay, my game is glitching out. I'm gonna have to, Okay, hey Pro, I ran into an off-the-radar player the other day, and him and his wife were very racist. Well, I hope that you reported them, Eric. Thank you for the super chat. I'm sorry that you went through that. But thank you guys for banning those accounts before. I don't know what those people's like I don't know what those people's problem is. Thank you, Chaz, TJ, and Fernando. Thank you. Shout out to my moderators for banning the stupid people from the chat. Thank you, guys. Pro, it may sound unbelievable, benevolent dictatorships existed, which actually made their countries extremely rare. Well, I think it's very rare that something like that happens. Well, basically, for people that don't know what he's talking about, a benevolent dictator is basically like a dictator that has the power of a dictator, but does everything for his people, not for himself. But that's very rare. Very rare will you have people like that in history. Like, I'd say 99% of dictators are always out for themselves, and at the expense of their people. It's very rare that you actually have a benevolent dictator. I think the closest thing that you could actually have to a benevolent dictator is what was his name? The guy in Singapore, the guy who ruled Singapore for like 30-something years. I don't remember his name, but he was oftentimes called a benevolent dictator, and that guy had raised like Singapore's living standards from, Singapore was a very poor country, and he raised Singapore's living standards to become an economic giant that it is today. Like, Singapore is one of the richest countries in the world today because of a lot of his policies. So I guess that's probably the best example that you could think of. Forget the guy's name. Somebody let me know in the chat. But it was the dictator of Singapore. But it's still, I still don't like dictatorships. That guy's like a rare one. Like, somebody that did do some good things for his country. But good dictators are rare. Lee Kuan Yew, yes, and isn't he like a very popular person in Singapore? Like, the Singaporeans love him to this day, right? So he's like I think he might have. Is he still alive? I think he might have passed away a few years ago. But I know that he's like people love him in Singapore. So that's just Let me go to the poker table here. But, you know what, I'll tell you guys something about Singapore, something really crazy about Singapore, is, what ended up happening was, do you guys know how Singapore actually formed as a country? Singapore is, like, the rarest, like, the craziest way that a country has ever formed, in my opinion. Like, the craziest way a country has ever formed. Singapore is such like a weird history when it comes to how that country became a country. Do you know? People aren't going to believe me when I tell them this because Singapore is a pretty interesting history. But Singapore, how they became an independent country, is they were kicked out of Malaysia. That's how they became an independent country. Is they used to be part of Malaysia because Malaysia was a British colony, and then Malaysia became independent. And what happened was the city of Singapore, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the vast majority of the people that lived in Singapore were Chinese. And then the people that lived in Malaysia, the rest of Malaysia were Malaysians. And so what happened was when the elections were coming up, there was also religious differences in that. And when the elections were coming up, the Malaysians thought that the Singaporeans had too much say in that. And so they didn't like that. And so they kicked out the Singaporeans. And the Singaporeans didn't want to be kicked out. They didn't want that. They wanted to be part of Malaysia. But the Malaysians kicked them out. And so that's how Singapore became an independent country, got kicked out. And that's the weirdest thing that I've ever heard of. The reason that's so weird is because that's so rare in history. That almost never happens in history. in history, countries will try very hard to keep territories from leaving, very hard, by force a lot of times. Even when certain places are treated like garbage, and countries will still try their absolute best to try to keep those places as much as possible, oftentimes by force. I never hear of another country kicking another country out and forcing it to become its own country, but that's what happened with Malaysia and Singapore. So Malaysia had kicked out Singapore, and this is something that Malaysia regrets to this day. So Malaysia kicked out Singapore. Singapore was very poor. And then you had the Lee Kuan Yew, who took power. He was a dictator, but he turned Singapore's economy completely around. And Singapore became like an economic giant. It's like Singapore is one of the richest countries in the world, has one of the highest standards of living. People in Singapore make a lot of money. There's not as much poverty in Singapore as in other parts of the world. Singapore is a very rich city, and people live comfortable lives. And if you look at Malaysia now, you compare the entire country of Singapore, their economy is much bigger than the entire country of Malaysia combined. So that's Singapore had outpaced Malaysia and became this, so they kicked them out because they didn't want them to have a say in the government. And then Singapore became this, economic giant that it is today. And so, yeah, Singapore did very well. And it's a very rich and successful country today. Hey man, love from Malaysia. How's life? Hey, Sing, how are you, man? Can I turn on member mode, please? Wait, what? What's going on? Is there more of those annoying, accounts? I'm sorry for the racist accounts that are coming up in chat, guys. My moderators are doing their best to deal with it. They're banning them. I'm sorry about that. It's a bunch of idiots in chat. Please turn on subscription only, mode. Okay, 1 second. I stick to solo lobbies rather than online because of them. Well, thank you, Eric. What's a reverse sting for the police? I'd have to look that one up. Hey, Professional, it's been a while since I came to one of your streams. What do you think about the downfall of XAS? And I actually don't know what that is. I'd have to Google it. It probably stands for something, right? Buy one of your mods a Sprunker and E-Cola with this. Thank you, Mr. Waifu. Okay, yeah, okay, wait, so, you guys want me to, they keep popping up? Okay, are these, bots? What's going on? Fernando and Chaz, do you want me to turn on, chat, members-only chat right now? Yeah, the moderators are doing the best job they can. I'm sorry about the idiots in chat, guys. It was just, I was talking about the crimes of these, European empires, and how these European empires had, abused, a lot of African nations and stole from them, which is what they did. And so, of course, that's going to upset, a lot of these racist idiots. And so they're going to come into chat and just, troll and just, do this stuff. Okay. Subscribe. Okay, hang on a second. Yeah, that might be the solution. Okay, wait 1 second, guys. I'm going to, hang on a second. I just gotta figure out how to do this, because I haven't done this before. Wait 1 second. What cards do I have? Let me check this. Okay, guys, I'm gonna, for anyone who's not subscribed to me right now, I'm turning on subscriber-only, mode. So only subscribers will be able to chat, and it's to stop the bots, to stop them for a minute, because this is, who can send messages, okay, participant modes, wait, who is, let me look at this. I'm just trying to figure this out. How do I do this? I think this is it. Subscribers? Let's see here if that does anything. Turn on subscribers only mode. Okay. So, if you can't comment right now, it's because you're not a subscriber. You don't have to subscribe to me. Don't feel like you have to subscribe to me. I'm just turning this on. You subscribe to me. Only subscribe to me if you like my content and you like me. I'm going to just keep this on for a few minutes at least. Because the racist bots are just getting out of control, and so these morons are just, spamming the chat right now. I'm sorry, everyone, about that. Let me look at the chat here. People try to justify empires by saying that the technological advances help the colonies, but ignore that they only use it for themselves and exploit. Yeah, you're right on that. You're right on that, Edgy. And remember literally what I said like literally I said like 10 or 15 minutes ago, I said that people try to deny their history. So they try to deny, and every country in this planet has done bad things. And I think that the best way to move on as a society and to progress is for everyone to admit the bad things they did. Everyone should admit to the bad things they did, take full responsibility for it, teach it, so that it never happens again. And I think that's really important to do that. But so many people around the world deny their country's history, and they say, "Oh, we didn't do that," when you clearly did, those horrible things. And this is some kind of like national pride or like some kind of arrogance, and they don't want to admit that their country did something bad. And so that's exactly where these idiots are coming from in the chat. The idiots that are spamming the racist stuff right now. So these idiots are like, people that don't like that I'm saying that, and so they and so they're spamming that. I'm sorry about that, guys, with the chat. Subscriber mode is turned on for 5 minutes right now. So after 5 minutes, I'll turn it off, and everyone can chat again. But it's just to stop the bots right now, because the bots at least aren't subscribed to me, and so they can't comment this garbage. But this is the first time that I'm seeing racist bots, because I've seen scam bots and I've seen porn bots, but I haven't seen racist bots, and so this is the first time that I'm seeing that now. So that's it's fine, handsome. Well, thank you, Steph. Yeah, I'll consider getting Nightbot. I'll consider that. Thank you, Chasaruni. Professional, what are your thoughts on Germany's past? Germany is one of the few countries in the world that teaches their history like fully and does a really good job. Like, the Germans generally take full responsibility for the horrible, evil things they've done. It's a huge part of their school like curriculum. Like, they teach it like the horrible things the Nazis did, the horrible things Hitler did, and that's when you're through the German school system, they emphasize that, they teach that extremely, like the horrible things that they did. But if you look at a country like Russia, for instance, like Russia will teach certain bad things that Stalin did, sure, and certain bad things that they did, but they overlook a lot of their bad history, and they almost teach Stalin like he's like a hero. So like the way that Germany does their education, I think, is good, is that they fully admit to like the horrible, evil things they've done. But like there's a lot of countries around the world that they teach like a very biased view of their education, and it's not and they will glorify people that are even like bad people throughout history, and so that's honestly, if anybody who thinks pointing out actual R-wordism is getting triggered, the real ones getting triggered are too politically correct. Well, thank you, Mr. Waifu. Thanks, man, thank you for the super chat. And then you look at a country like China today also. Like, China praises Mao Zedong. They have statues dedicated to him. Like, they teach that he's like this great hero in their schools, even though Mao Zedong is like one of the worst butchers in human history. And there's dumb people in there's dumb people like even in the West. There's dumb people in like my country in America who think that Mao Zedong is some kind of hero, and they think that communism is a good system. So that's what I'll say is like a lack of education does that to people. And so, and the thing is, you don't even need schools a lot of times for this, but read stuff on it, research it on your own, and don't try to deny history. Don't don't. I don't know why people are attracted to these extremist ideologies or why people like this, but it's just that it's like I've seen people on I've seen people on social media that think that Mao Zedong and like Stalin were good people. So that's just Just wanted to say hi, Pro. Just wanted to say how much I respect and love you and your content. I've been subbed to you since you're grinding to 200,000 live stream. I still watch your old GTA live streams when I play GTA Online. Hope this money helps you. Thank you, Sanchez. You gave me the largest super chat today, $50. Thanks, man. I do really appreciate it. see if I win this. Pair of sevens. Ah. Ah, why did he get good cards again? I think it's because Stalin won the war and prevented the extermination of their people that Russia teaches a biased view of him. Thank you, Edgy. Thank you for the super chat. The thing is, though, is you have to look at history from, like, you know, you have to look at history from all perspectives. And sure, like, you know, Stalin did defeat the Nazis. You know, yes, you know, you have to teach that. That's part of history. He did, you know, stop the Nazis. And the Nazis, Hitler is worse than Stalin. You know, some people think that, you know, some people think that Stalin was worse than Hitler. I don't agree with that. I think Hitler was much worse than Stalin. But Stalin was still, like, you know, a complete psycho that killed millions of people. But, you know, Stalin did defeat Hitler, true. And, you know, I guess that's a good thing that he did. But, you know, what about the Gulag system? What about all the people he sent to the Gulags and, you know, the millions of people that he had killed or the millions of people he starved to death? You know, Stalin is responsible for some really horrible atrocities. And, you know, there'd be entire families would get punished. Like, somebody spoke out against the government. Stalin would punish the entire family and send them to, like, a work camp in Siberia. So it's, you know, Stalin did some really horrible things. But, you know, that's why I think it's important to, like, I think it's important that when you, you know, when you look at history, you know, yes, Stalin, you know, I guess defeated the Nazis, and that was a good thing that he did, but, you know, what about all the horrible things that he did? You also have to point that out. And, you know, Stalin was not a good man. So that's, that. You have to also remember that Stalin did sign the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with the with Hitler. That was before the war. It was 1939, in which they actually agreed to divide up Poland. So the question is whether Stalin would have done anything, whether Hitler would have betrayed him. So if Hitler didn't betray him, would Stalin have done anything to actually stop him? That's the question. That's something that can be more debated. But yeah, so it's, yeah, and the thing is, though, is that the Russian education system, for instance, they teach a very biased view of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and they claim that the reason that Russia had signed that pact was so that so that Germany would not attack them, and that they weren't allies with Germany. Well, what I'll say about that is, the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany were not allies. They hated each other. But they did have a partnership with each other. That is true. And the thing is, though, where was Germany actually getting a lot of its oil for when it invaded, like, countries before it invaded the Soviet Union? From the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was actually sending a lot of gas to Germany. That is actually true. The Soviets were selling them a lot of gas. And so a lot of people do not know about that. And the gas obviously stopped being sold to Germany when Germany betrayed Russia. But it was, or I should call it the Soviet Union at the time, but that's, you know, that's a part of history a lot of people don't know about. And the thing is, though, there's a very big difference between signing a peace treaty with another country and a treaty that specifically says you're going to divide up another country from another country. Because that's exactly what the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact said. It said that they were going to divide up Poland. And so Stalin agreed, I'm going to take this part of Poland, and the Nazis were going to take that part of Poland. So that was like, that's another thing. And the Russian education system, like I said, is not going to teach a very fair view of this. Referencing the previous super chat regarding the IRA, Northern Ireland unfortunately had the Ulster Volunteer Force, a loyalist paramilitary that conducted terrorist attacks in the Republic of Ireland during the Trouble. Oh, thank you, the super chat captain. I've never heard of this group. The Ulster Volunteer Force. Okay, hopefully I get some good cards here now. I don't like football, personally. I'm just not, What is the moment that Germany betrayed Russia? Operation Barbarossa, when they invaded the Soviet Union. And also, I'll tell you something, is, Stalin had so many Soviet officers, like, shot. And so many Soviet generals killed. And Stalin killed some really smart generals. That's one of the reasons that if you look the first 2 years that Germany invaded the Soviet Union, they were rolling over Russia, like the first 2 years. And the reason that they were rolling over them was not just because the Germans were more advanced, but it was also because Stalin had purged the Soviet military so badly. Stalin had killed so many generals and so many officers that were very talented and very smart individuals. And so because of that, the Soviets they lost some of their smartest generals. Their purges also completely ruined their stocks. They were just ill-equipped. They weren't prepared. And so according to Stalin's own orders, Stalin should have been shot according to his own orders for incompetence and failure. Because Stalin would have so many people shot for defeats and stuff like that, but according to Stalin's own orders, he should have been shot himself because of just how he had not predicted that the Germans were going to betray him, and just the fact that he had let his country getting invaded so quickly. And the first week that Germany invaded the Soviet Union, nobody knew where Stalin was. He was like panicking in some like underground bunker. So that's that. Like they would have had a much better chance against like against the Nazis if Stalin hadn't like purged so many Soviet generals. But like a lot of that can also be blamed on Stalin and his stupid leadership. One thing I will say though is that like Stalin, his purges were like really evil and stupid. But what I'll say about it is that Stalin at least learned from that, and he didn't do it during the war anymore. Because what happened was when Stalin got rid of so many of his generals, and then he had like a lot of stupid generals left. He did have some intelligent generals like Zhukov. Zhukov was probably his best general that Stalin hadn't killed off. And what happened was Stalin decided to stop interfering in the generals' plans and stop telling them what to do. During World War II, Hitler would constantly go into the planning room and he would constantly tell his German generals, "You do this and that and this and that and that, no question," and just that. And the German generals were scared of Hitler, and even when they knew that something was a tactical mistake, they would have no choice but to do it because that was Hitler's orders. Stalin wouldn't do that. He wouldn't go in the room and he would tell the Soviet generals, "You do this and that and that." That was before the war. But when they got invaded really badly, Stalin decided instead to back off. He would demand updates. He would call the generals. He would pressure them, sure, but he wouldn't do it like Hitler, where he would constantly interfere. Because Stalin realized that he wasn't a military genius, but Hitler thought that he was like some kind of Napoleon or something like that, and he thought he was intelligent. When Hitler, in reality, he was a tactical idiot. Hitler had no idea of what warfare, what World War II warfare was like. He did fight in World War I, but he had really no idea of tank warfare and a lot of the tactics that the Germans had used in World War II. But that actually helped us win the war faster because Hitler was so stupid that helped us win the war faster. If some of the other German generals were in charge, like Rommel was in charge, we would have a lot more problems, and so it would have been a lot harder to defeat the Nazis. In a situation like that. You see here, I missed a few comments. Thank you, Athena, for sponsoring my channel again. Thank you. Thank you, TJ, for sponsoring my channel again. The people who simp for Stalin are usually socialist Yankees. They want the capitalist patriarchy to be dismantled and replaced by socialism. Yeah. And I'll tell you guys something. This is what the people who praise Stalin, they don't know about Stalin's they either don't know about Stalin's mass murders or they're completely ignorant of it. And the thing is, though, I'll tell you, these people probably would not know that Stalin was a massive racist as well. A lot of people don't know that Stalin was a really big racist. Stalin hated Polish people. He hated Ukrainians as well. Stalin really didn't like Jewish people, and he really didn't like Tatars. Which Tatars, they're a people that are originally from Central Asia, but a lot of them live in Eastern Europe. Let me make a bet here. Bet against this guy here, because this time I'm gonna win. Yeah, he thinks because I've been losing that he's gonna get the upper hand on me. 2 pair of kings and 3s. What? 2-pair king and queen? Oh, come on. You know, this is ridiculous. This guy keeps getting the good card. I had such good cards and he still got better cards than me. That's ridiculous. I should have won that. Oh, man. Yeah, but, yeah, Stalin was, you know, an anti-Semite. He was a racist. He was not, you know, these people that praise him, you know, don't even know this about him. You know what, I'll tell you one thing, what is it, if you guys know who Khrushchev is, Khrushchev is the guy who ended up taking power after Stalin. Khrushchev was one of the top people in Stalin's, like, administration. And so what happened was, do you know what Stalin would do to Khrushchev? What Stalin would do to Khrushchev is he would tell Khrushchev to drink vodka. He would tell him to, he would get him drunk. And then he would yell at him, and then he would tell him to dance, you blank, and then he would say Ukrainian after that. I think you guys know what you're saying. So Stalin didn't like Ukrainians. Khrushchev was Ukrainian. And so he would, you know, he would force Khrushchev to dance. He would also mock him over being bald. And so, you know, Stalin abused Khrushchev. Khrushchev was actually lucky he never got purged. But Stalin had abused Khrushchev and treated him like garbage. And then what happened was when Khrushchev came to power, Khrushchev purged all of Stalin's people. Like when he took power, he got rid of all of Stalin's people and had them arrested. And so there's a reason that Khrushchev had those people arrested, because he saw what Stalin had done and he was sick of it. And he was sick of Stalin's personal abuse. And after Stalin died, he made it his mission to get rid of Stalin's cabinet and all the people that were loyal to Stalin. And so that's the thing about Khrushchev. To be fair, from a historical point of view, Khrushchev did do some bad things when he worked under Stalin. He did participate in some of Stalin's atrocities, but he did de-Stalinize Russia. And so Khrushchev is not a popular leader in Russian history. Like when Soviet history is taught, Khrushchev is not like a popular, like he's more popular than Gorbachev. Like Gorbachev is the most hated Russian modern leader. Even though a lot of the bad stuff that happened wasn't Gorbachev's fault. But it was, you know, Khrushchev, I think, is not recognized personally for a lot of the stuff that he had done, because Khrushchev had shut down like 90% of the gulags in Siberia. Like Khrushchev had shut down the vast majority of them, but he couldn't shut down all of them. And the reason that Khrushchev couldn't shut down all of them is because Stalin had made the Soviet economy so dependent on gulags, you know, forced labor, that Khrushchev, shutting them all down would actually crash the Soviet economy. And so Khrushchev improved conditions in the gulags. He shut the gulags down that he could. He had gotten rid of Stalin's cult of personality. He made people less afraid. He got rid of a lot of the secret police. He obviously still couldn't criticize the Soviet government or you'd go to jail. But, you know, it wasn't as bad as, like, under Stalin. Like, under Stalin, you'd be sent to, like, a work camp and, you know, you'd never be heard from again. Under Khrushchev, you'd probably just go to jail. So it was a very different system. But, like, because of Khrushchev's policies and the fact that, like, Khrushchev had, like, a lot of those people arrested, like a lot of those top people, he had them arrested. He ended up saving millions of lives because of his policies. In the West, though, when we look at a person like Khrushchev in the West, we think of the Cuban Missile Crisis, because Khrushchev was the guy who caused the Cuban Missile Crisis. He's also the guy who was involved with the construction of the Berlin Wall. But we don't think of him as also the guy who de-Stalinized Russia, because even though Khrushchev did do bad things, you know, Berlin Wall, the Cuban Missile Crisis, his other policies did also save millions of lives when he got rid of, like, Stalin's, like, you know, top people. Because the people that Khrushchev put on trial, the people that he had executed, a lot of those people were really bad people. Like, you had Beria, for instance. Beria is one of the people that Khrushchev had shot. And Beria was, like, one of the worst human beings ever, one of the top people in Stalin's, like, you know, inner circle. If you want to know the type of person that Beria was, Beria, what he would do is he would drive around in his limo around Moscow. And so Beria was a communist, and yet he would drive around his fancy limo. And so what Beria would do is he would pull up in his fancy limo to, like, random Russian women that he would see on the streets in Moscow. He would be nice and friendly to them. He'd lure them into the limo, and then he would rape them. And so he was a serial rapist. He did this to numerous women. And what ended up happening was Stalin knew about this. So Stalin knew that the guy that he had working for him was like a serial rapist. And Stalin even told his daughter, he said, stay away from Beria, never be in a room alone with him. So Stalin knew about this Beria being like this serial rapist, and yet he did nothing to stop it. He only told his own daughter to stay away from him. And so that's like one of the people that Khrushchev had shot. So Beria was like a horrible person. And the really creepy thing is that the Beria was a Soviet ambassador previously. And I think he was an ambassador in a South American country, I think it was. I'm trying to remember what the country was. But the Soviet embassy later became a Russian embassy. When they were actually renovating the embassy, they found dead bodies of women inside the walls of the embassy. And those were Beria's victims. So that's the type of one of the type of people that Stalin had working for him. So that was like, Beria definitely deserved it when Khrushchev had him shot. So there was like, you know, some of those people were responsible for really horrible things in the Soviet Union. And Beria's policies, like he was also, you know, a politician. So, you know, Beria's policies, like he would, you know, enforce Stalin's will on people. He would enforce a secret police and do, you know, some really horrible things. So that's like, you know, the creepy guy that, you know, one of the creepy guys that you're working for Stalin. So like when people say that, you know, Stalin was like some kind of hero or that Stalin was a good guy, no, he wasn't. You know, he was a very bad, you know, cruel, evil man. He did defeat the Nazis, which we should give Stalin credit for that. But he did, you know, he did some really, you know, really horrible things and killed millions of his own people as well. And so that's why when you look at history, I think you gotta look at like a lot of, you gotta look at a lot of different perspectives on this. And so that was, I'm gonna fold here. I don't got anything good. But that was that. There's actually a really good movie on this, and it's actually called The Death of Stalin. If you guys ever watch it, The Death of Stalin is like a comedy also, but it's a lot of it is also historically accurate, and so it's a pretty interesting movie to check out. With the what I'll say about it is what I'll say about like also about this is Zhukov. Zhukov was like, you know, the greatest, you know, Soviet hero of World War II. He was even regarded as a much bigger hero than Stalin, because Stalin was just a dictator of Russia, or the Soviet Union at the time. But Zhukov was actually on the front lines. He was commanding armies. He was helping to defeat the Nazis. He was helping to, you know, kick them out, and completely take Berlin. And what happened was Zhukov was seen as a national hero, which he was. But Stalin was jealous of that, and Stalin wanted Zhukov dead. But the thing about this is Zhukov was never purged by Stalin. Do you know why he was never purged by Stalin? It was because Stalin couldn't touch him. Because Zhukov was loved by the masses, and so the Soviet people loved him. And so if Stalin had touched Zhukov, this massive war hero, that he would there might have been civil unrest in Russia, and Stalin might have gotten overthrown. So that's why he left Zhukov alone. But what happened was when Khrushchev was actually leading his coup against Stalin's cabinet, Zhukov actually helped him. And without Zhukov, that coup might not have been successful. And so there's a reason that Zhukov hated Stalin because of that. So that was that's why Zhukov helped Khrushchev in de-Stalinized Russia. So, you know, Zhukov, I think you could argue is, you know, the real, you know, Soviet hero of the war, because Zhukov was the one on the front lines who defeated the Nazis, and not only that, but he helped to de-Stalinize Russia. So you could argue that Zhukov was, you know, the real hero. Let me see here. I don't got any good. I'm getting crap cards. This guy with the $75 keeps getting good cards. He's getting really lucky. Will 171 ever get an online multiplayer like GT Online? GT Online itself needs a competition. I don't know. They're right now working on the single player. But, I want to get one good hand here and win this. Pro, what do you know about Che Guevara? Oh, the Argentinian revolutionary who fought in the Cuban Revolution, and he ended up getting killed in Bolivia. Che Guevara is not a good man. I personally think it's stupid when you see so many people with a Che Guevara shirt on, and they praise him like he's some kind of, like, you know, revolutionary hero, and they look up to him. What I'll say about Che Guevara is I talked about him before in like another part, but when another stream, actually not the first person to actually asked me about Che Guevara. But Che Guevara supported Castro supported Castro had basically what he did to the Cuban government, because not everybody who fought in the Cuban Revolution was a communist. Like, Cuba was a dictatorship before, like, Castro took power. It was a dictatorship by Fulgencio Batista. Fulgencio Batista was an American, supported dictator. The CIA had supported him. And to this day, from a historical perspective, I blame the CIA for communism in Cuba. I despise communism. But I blame the CIA for losing Cuba. I think it's the CIA's fault. Because the CIA had supported Batista's reign in Cuba because he was an anti-communist. But just because he was an anti-communist doesn't mean he was a good person. Batista had worked with the Mafia, like you see in The Godfather 2. So he's a very corrupt man. He's like, very, very bad guy. He stole a lot of money from the Cuban taxpayers. And so that's why it was so easy for Castro to gain power. And then when Castro gained power, he blamed everything on the Americans. And he would say, the Americans that supported Batista, which to an extent is true. It was the CIA. But Castro himself was not a good man. He was not a good man. He was a terrible person. And so Castro had manipulated the situation, basically to give himself power, make himself the new dictator of Cuba, put communism into Cuba, which, destroyed Cuba. Cuba's, ruined country to this day. It's a very poor country, has really horrible infrastructure. And so the vast majority, what Castro didn't tell the Cuban people, what he didn't tell the Cuban people, is that the vast majority of the American public actually supported the Cuban Revolution up until it was communist. That's what it was. Like, the vast majority of the American public saw people fighting in Cuba for freedom, which a lot of people in Cuba were fighting for freedom. But what happened was when Castro was fighting in the Cuban Revolution, nobody knew who Castro was. Do I even have one pair? No, I don't. I don't even have a pair. But nobody knew who Castro really was. They just knew he was a revolutionary. They didn't know his political views. And then a year after the revolution, Castro declared himself a communist and declared Cuba like a socialist state. And then pretty much everything that happened at that point. But I blame that. That's like Cuba. The fall of Cuba to communism is probably one of the worst. It's like probably one of the worst. Pair of kings. Okay. Looks like I'm gonna actually win this hand for once, but I didn't win a lot. But it was the CIA's fault. Like, the CIA messed up bad by allowing Castro. They messed up, because if the CIA hadn't supported Batista, and the thing is, the last few months of the war, the U.S. government had stopped giving aid to Batista, because the American public had sympathized with the Cuban revolutionaries. So the vast majority of the American public supported the Cuban Revolution, because it wasn't a communist revolution when it started. It wasn't. It only became communism like a year after the revolution. And so there's plenty of people that fought for freedom. They wanted a change in Cuba. They wanted Cuba to be a democracy. They wanted to kick Batista out, which Batista deserved to get overthrown. He was a really bad guy. But what happened was, the second that Castro took power, he had everybody that he didn't agree with either jailed or killed. And this includes people that fought on his side, people that fought for the revolution, for freedom in Cuba. And Che Guevara was one of those people who was supported by Castro, who had imprisoned people and had people killed who didn't agree with Castro. So Che Guevara supported Castro's crackdown. He supported Castro's secret police. He supported throwing all those people in jail and having them killed who didn't agree with Che Guevara. Che Guevara had also trashed the Cubans who had fled Cuba. So a lot of Cubans had fled Cuba and fled to Florida. And so when Che Guevara was actually at the United Nations, he actually attacked the Cubans who had fled Cuba and went to America. And he basically tried to suggest that the Cubans who had fled to America were parasites. And he tried to suggest that they were some kind of wealthy elites who were abusing like the poor Cubans, when that wasn't true. A lot of the people in Cuba, they just wanted personal freedom and they didn't want to live under Castro's regime. They weren't all wealthy elites. Like some of the people that fled to America were revolutionaries. They fought in the revolution. They didn't fight for communism. They fought for the freedom of Cubans. That's the type of person that Che was. Che was not a good man. I wouldn't compare him to like Stalin. Like, Stalin was much worse than Che, but Che was not like Che was not a good man himself. And the fact that so many people like have his stupid shirt on, to see with the stupid red star and then the stupid beret that he has on, he was not a good man. He was a bad guy. And so that's a lot of people don't know that about him. What do you know about Pancho Villa? You're talking about the Mexican revolutionary, right? He fought for change in Mexico because Mexico had a very corrupt government. It's actually at the time of Red Dead Redemption 1 when he fought. So he fought for freedom in Mexico. Pancho Villa is a bit of a controversial figure. I don't know that much about him like I know about Che. Like, Che I know much more about. But like Pancho Villa, from what I know about him, I know that 2 queens, good cards. He fought for change in Mexico. Some Mexicans consider him like a massive hero to this day. He fought for change in Mexico, but when the government was overthrown in Mexico, not much changed. People's living standards didn't change, and it was pretty much the same old, same old. It was just a different government changed. And then what happened to Pancho Villa was assassinated. I think he was driving in his presidential car, and there was like a bunch of gunmen that appeared in the street and just, shut up the limo, and he died. That's how Pancho Villa met his end. And so I personally think that the people that had him assassinated were people that were higher up in the Mexican government. I think it was other people in the Mexican government that didn't like Pancho Villa, and they probably had him killed off. That's at least what I think from a historical perspective. That it was probably some of the people in the Mexican government that had him killed off. And I don't think it was ever solved who killed Pancho Villa. I think it's a mystery to this day. So that's about him. That's but that's about, like, and what's his name, Reyes in Red Dead Redemption 1. The revolutionary that's in Red Dead Redemption 1, he won? How does this guy get all the good cards always? He's getting, and the thing is, I wouldn't even say, it's not that guy, okay, it's a different guy. But, the revolutionary Red Dead Redemption 1, how he didn't care about anything, he just, did the revolution just for his own personal benefit. He's basically a parody of the Mexican, like, revolutionary leaders who pretended like they were fighting for the people, but in reality they were fighting for themselves. And so that's what that was about. Let me see here. What is your opinion on the Contras in Nicaragua? The Contras were revolutionaries. Let me just Google them to see Contras, Nicaragua. Let me see here if I'm thinking of the right group. Okay, yeah, the Contras, okay, I know who you're talking about now. I googled the Contras. Here's my position on this, because I don't understand, personally, like, one thing that I never understood about history is I never understood what is this obsession with choosing one dictator over the other. That's what I never understood. Like, if you look at Cuba, for instance, like, you'll have people that'll argue and they'll say that Batista was a better dictator for Cuba, and then we have people that'll argue that Castro's a better dictator for Cuba. So people will say, I'd rather live under Castro, I'd rather live under Batista, and stuff like that. And my perspective is, why settle for one dictator? Why not just say screw to all the dictators? Get rid of all the dictators. Get rid of all of them. I don't care if the dictator is some right-wing capitalist dictator, and I don't care if he's some left-wing communist dictator like Castro. Get rid of all of them. All of them. Screw all dictators. All dictators have to go. Get rid of all of them. I don't care if this is a right-wing or a left-wing dictator, but people like, say, this dictator is better than this dictator. Just get rid of all of them. That's just my perspective. Why take one side? Just all of them should go. Just get rid of all of them. And so that's my position ultimately on the Cuban, revolution. Is I think the revolution was justified in overthrowing Batista. But what I don't think was justified is I don't think Castro's rise to power was justified. I don't think his communist overthrow of the government was justified or anything like that. I think Batista deserved to get overthrown. He's a bad dictator. But I don't think that doesn't mean that I think that Castro was some kind of, good man. He was an evil man also. I wanted Cuba to be a democracy. That's what it was. And Cuba had a chance to be a democracy at the revolution, but the CIA messed it up too. And so it's like a lot of things, a lot of contributing factors. But, you asked me about the Contras before. The Contras, I'm no fan of them. I was just thinking of I was just getting them mixed up because there was two groups in Nicaragua. There was the Contras and then there was the FSLN, which the FSLN were basically the communists. So it was the FSLN and then there was the Contras, and the FSLN were supported by the Soviets, where the Contras were supported by the CIA. The Contras were not good people also. The Contras had committed massacres in Nicaragua. And the Contras were also involved in drugs. The Contras moved coke. So they would work with cartels, and they were involved in like millions of dollars of coke. And a lot of that coke actually entered the U.S. And actually, Torino in GTA San Andreas is actually one of those CIA agents that's actually involved in the coke trade. So he's actually involved in like helping move coke into like different countries and selling it. And if you want to know why is the CIA involved in the coke trade, why? The reason for that is because it's a way for them to raise cash really quickly and not be traced. If they get cash from the government, it's traced. If they raise cash illegally really quickly, they can get the funds they need. And it's not traced. And so they don't care where the coke goes. They don't care what it does to people. And so that's ultimately what Torino was based on. And so, well, my personal position on this is the debate is whether the entire CIA was in on it. We know that some people in the U.S. government were in on the coke trade. We know that. The question is whether the entire CIA was in on it. That's something that can be more debated. I think there's definitely evidence to suggest that. But yeah, the Contras weren't good people, and the FSLN were not good people either. And the FSLN ended up taking power in Nicaragua, and Nicaragua is a dictatorship to this day. You have Daniel Ortega, who's the president of Nicaragua right now, and Ortega, about him, is people call him a president. He's not a president. He's a dictator. You know, Ortega has been in power for, you know, how long now, and you can't criticize Ortega in Nicaragua. You can't. And Nicaragua is like that one government in Central America that all the other, you know, governments don't like. Like, you know, I have one of my best friends. He lives in Honduras, and he tells me about how Nicaragua, that government, is constantly causing problems also in Central America. So, like, you know, all the Central American governments, you know, Panama, Costa Rica, you know, El Salvador, you know, Honduras, all of them don't like Nicaragua because Nicaragua is just such an aggressive government, and it's because of the FSLN that took power. But, yeah, so it's like, you know, my position is I don't like the Contras, and I don't like the FSLN. I don't like either of them. So they were just, you know, bad. My ideal people that I would support people who'd want a democracy, an actual change, not a right-wing or a left-wing dictatorship. You know, something where, you know, the people actually decide. And that's, that. Well, Noriega was in power in the, you know, the late 80s. You know, that was in Panama. But, yeah, that's, yeah, and also, Nicaragua, Nicaragua is that country that also has Russian military bases, or is actually supporting building a Russian military base. So people don't know that. People don't know that the Russians are actually building a military base in Nicaragua. A lot of people don't know that, but they actually are. And Nicaragua, what is it also about it, is Nicaragua actually supports Russia in its, like, invasion of Ukraine. And Nicaragua also has ties to, like, Iran and North Korea. So that's the type of government that you have in Nicaragua today. So this is not a nice government at all. So this is, yeah. Any new clothes coming to Red Dead? No, I don't think so. Not at least, maybe in the next update. But the next update is probably going to be a few missions. Fun fact, in Ghost of Tsushima, you can see Japan's third biggest island from Iki, and you can see Korea from Western Tsushima. Oh, you can. I didn't know about that, Diego. Sandinistas, yes, them. Yes, that is what they were called, the FSLN. That's pretty much what they were called, the Sandinista National Liberation Front. Ortega has been president of Nicaragua since 2007, my god. And people say he's not a dictator. Oh my god. It's, yeah, that guy, you're handsome, professional. Well, thank you. But I'll tell you something is like, I blame the CIA personally for the mess that's in, like, Cuba today. Like, I blame the CIA for that, because if we had been allies with the Cubans, and we had treated and the CIA had treated the Cubans better and not supported, like, you know, the Batista dictatorship, then a lot of the Cubans would have had a better view of the United States, and Castro wouldn't have been able to use that as propaganda against the U.S. So that was, like, definitely a failure of, like, American foreign policy. But then you also have, like, the Russians have, like, plenty of countries that they had also ruined. Like, it was, like, you know, one country to this day that you can definitely say is Russia's complete fault is North Korea. North Korea is 100% Russia's fault. That's all on Russia. Everything bad that happens in North Korea, that's on Russia's history. That's their fault. Because the Soviets were the ones who put the North Korean government in power. And so they had supported the North Korean government for some time. Russia does still support the North Korean government to this day. So that's definitely, like, I take responsibility for, like, you know, the CIA, like, you know, messing up, and, like, we lost Cuba to communism. We lost it because it was just, we could have had Cuba as an ally, but we lost it because the CIA were stupid. But, like, Russia is responsible for North Korea. That's on them also. So that's what I'll say about it. If Pro ever made a history series, definitely watch it. And, you know, and when I talk history, you know, I talk history very differently than, like, a lot of historians that you guys might watch. Because, like, when I talk history, I specifically call out everyone's BS. Like, everyone. Like, I don't take sides or anything like that. And I will, you know, even when I'm talking about the Cold War, like, I hate communism. I despise communism. Like, but I'll point out the bad things the CIA did. And I'll point out the bad things the U.S. government did in its history during the Cold War. I also point out the bad things the Soviet Union did. And so it's like, you know, I admit to all of them, and I'll point them all out. But, like, a lot of people have, like, a select, like, view of history where they point this out, but then ignore one thing and all of that. And it's like that. It's like, you know, when it came to Nicaragua earlier, I said, you know, when it comes to the Contras and when it comes to the Sandinistas, I say, you know, screw all of them. Just that's what I just say. All of them are bad. And that's, you know, that's ultimately my position on that. Oh, I actually got some good cards here. Okay, let me see here. Oh, he's folding? Okay, I'm probably going to end this here. Yeah, I'm not getting any... Yeah, I did horrible, but it's probably because I was talking so much history. But yeah, just thoughts on communism. Communism is a destructive, you know, evil system. It's a stupid system as well. You know what I'll say? Thoughts on... Oh, I don't talk modern politics. I'm not going to talk about that. It's a divisive subject. What I will say is, like, you know, communism is just, you know, just such a bad system, such a terrible, you know, terrible system. It doesn't work. It's what will I say about, like,
Good to see you again, sir.
what do I say about it is how do I describe this? You know, limiting exactly how much money people can make, forcing people to use ration cards, you know, and not only that, but also arresting anybody that doesn't agree with you. And, like, you know, I'll tell you, my parents, like, grew up under communism. You know, my parents grew up in Eastern Europe. And so I hear, like, the horror stories from my parents a lot of times, you know, talking about, like, you know, the stuff that they went through. And so, like, you know, my father tells me, like, a lot of times, he tells me that that I have no idea how lucky I am. He tells me that when he came to this country, it was easier for him than it is for me, at least. He says that, like, when I first came to this country, you could, in the 80s, my dad says, you could go to a diner and you could have, like, you know, scrambled eggs and, like, you know, toast and a coffee for a few dollars, but now it's more expensive. But he does tell me that I'm lucky, at least, that when I go to the supermarket, that everything is there. And I could go to the supermarket and buy groceries, and I could go there in the morning, I could go in there midday, I could go in there in the afternoon, or I could go there at night, even when they're open, if they're open. And so if I go to the supermarket, generally I'm able to buy food. It's not that I'm going to go to the supermarket and we're going to have empty shelves. That's not going to happen. There might be like one or two items at a stock, but it's not going to be empty. But when my parents went to the supermarket, do you know how a supermarket worked in a communist country? What my parents basically went through, my parents would be online. My parents have to wake up 4 o'clock in the morning. And they would have to go to the supermarket, stand in the line at 5 o'clock in the morning. And in Poland, especially in the wintertime, 5 o'clock in the morning, it's like the coldest. And so they would have to stand in the you know, freezing cold, wait on line, and there's a huge line, so there's a huge front of people that they're on line with, and they have to wait till the delivery truck comes. And then when they get to the actual supermarket, imagine walking into the supermarket and you see like 2 cans on the shelf. Imagine that. And then, like, everybody's fighting over that 1 can. And that's exactly what my parents had gone through. And so the government would give you ration cards. And the ration cards would tell you how much meat you can buy in a week, how much milk you can buy in a week, or I think it might have been a month. And so there's that. They would also tell you how much cigarettes you could you could buy in like in a month. And so a lot of times these ration cards were not labeled by name. And so people would trade in ration cards, and ration cards became almost like a new black market currency. And so basically communism created like a whole black market of ration cards around, and that didn't help. And then moonshiners came about too, because all the alcohol was controlled by the government. It was not a good system. It was just a giant mess. And so, you know, my dad always tells me, you know, raised me growing up. He told me, you know, be grateful for what you have, because one day you might not have nothing. That's what my dad says. My dad says, like, I had barely nothing to eat, like when I was growing up. And my dad says even when food was disgusting and I didn't like the taste of it, I would eat it because I would know that I'd have nothing else to eat. That's what my dad would say to me. So, like, my parents are very against, like, wasting anything. They hate wasting food. They conserve everything. They're not, my parents aren't cheap or greedy or anything, but they understand what it is to have nothing. And so that's just their whole mindset and what they grew up with. And that's you know what you know, the system that my parents had dealt with and my parents had grown up under. And the thing is, though, I only talked about the economic consequences of communism, but the political consequences of communism, I didn't even talk about the killings. The killings are the worst part about it. Is every single communist country has committed murders. Every single one. There's not one communist country who has not arrested its people for criticizing it. There's not one communist country who has not imprisoned or killed some people. Some communist countries have killed more people than others. Sure, there's some that are worse than others. Like North Korea was definitely worse than communist Poland, but it's both of these countries had still imprisoned and killed people. And so that's it. Like why was it illegal to leave a communist country? Why was it illegal to leave? You couldn't move. You couldn't leave, and so I'll tell you, that the people that think that, like, communism is a good system, these same people would not be able to survive without Twitter. They wouldn't be able to survive without their iPhone and stuff like that, and they wouldn't even realize they wouldn't even have most of this stuff. And what I'll say is, like, I'm generally a free market guy. Like, I don't like the government getting involved in the economy, but sometimes I understand the government does need to get involved in the economy to an extent. And so it's like my professor in college, I remember he specifically said this, and I wish every single college professor on this planet would teach exactly what my college professor said. And he said one thing that I will never forget. And he said this. He said that capitalism is not a perfect system. He said it has problems, there's things we can improve, and there are bad things in it. But comparing it to everything else that's out there, it's the best system. That's what my teacher would say. So my teacher was not praising capitalism. He said that he admitted that there's problems with capitalism. He admits that there's bad things about capitalism. But he said when you compare it to still all the other things, you compare it to everything else is much worse. Socialism, communism, fascism, all of this stuff is garbage. All of this stuff is just bad. Capitalism isn't a perfect system. It has issues. I know that. There's, evil, greedy corporations. I get that. But, you compare it to, everything else, all the other ideologies that existed that claim to be anti-capitalist. And it was just, everything else is just garbage. And not only is it garbage, it's evil. Like, a lot of times. Like, communism and fascism are just evil. So it's just, you have, like, these failed systems and these evil systems. And just, I don't think that, like, the people that complain, like, a lot of times, like, they complain about capitalism and all this other stuff. I don't think they realize just how good they have it in this country. I know some people have it better than others. I don't dispute that. I feel for everyone. But, you compare this to, like, any, other country, like, would you honestly rather live, like, the people who complain about capitalism, would you honestly rather live in, like, Cuba or America? Would you rather live in North Korea or America? I'd much rather live in America 100 times over. You couldn't even if I had to, even if you gave me $10 million just so I could spend 1 month in North Korea, I still wouldn't do it. So that's like, I don't get this personally, how people like think that, like, they think that communism is like a good system and they think these countries are doing it, and that's and that's that. Yeah. And I'll tell you something is, personally, I don't understand this, like, this, people will point to countries like the Scandinavian countries, and they'll say, like, they'll say that, like, Norway and, like, Finland and Sweden are socialist and they, they do well. And these countries, have high living standards. And Norway, Sweden, and Finland do really well. Their people are people are generally happy in those countries, and people have good standards of living. But those countries aren't socialist. That's what people don't understand. Those countries are not socialist. Because Norway, Sweden, and Finland has nationalized certain things, sure, they have. But there's still a lot of private industry. Norway, Sweden, and Finland have not locked themselves off from the world economy. Like, I can go to Norway, Sweden, or Finland. Like, if I'm an American businessman, I can go to Norway, Sweden, and Finland, and I can purchase property in those countries, and I can open up a business in those countries, even if I'm not a citizen. But you look at a country like Venezuela. Venezuela is socialist. Norway and Sweden and Finland aren't. Norway and Sweden and Finland are still capitalist countries. A lot of people think they're socialist, but no, they're capitalist countries. They have more of a controlled economy. Sure, they have universal healthcare and education, but that doesn't make them socialist. You look at Venezuela, for instance. Venezuela has nationalized pretty much everything. Almost everything is nationalized in Venezuela. Everything is under government control. The government in Venezuela gives people ration cards for foods. People don't give, in Norway, Sweden, and Finland, they don't use ration cards for food. They use money for food. When you want to go buy food at the store, you use money in Sweden, Finland, and Norway. You don't use ration cards. You use ration cards. There is some money in Venezuela, but the government gives them ration cards for people. You know, so Venezuela is a socialist country. They nationalized everything, and not only that, but Venezuela has locked itself off from the world. So like if I was an American businessman and I tried to go to Venezuela and I tried to purchase property or I tried to start up a business in Venezuela, the Venezuelan government would basically tell me to get the hell out of here. And so because of that, there's no private industry, there's no investment in Venezuela, nobody wants to invest in Venezuela. The only thing that is keeping Venezuela from total economic collapse is oil. That's really the only reason, because Venezuela has one of the largest oil reserves in the world. So that's ultimately what keeps Venezuela from completely collapsing, is their oil reserves. But you know, I personally cannot stand it. I don't like it when people say that like Sweden, Norway, and Finland are socialist. Those aren't socialist countries. You could probably call them social democracies at most if you want that, but I still think that's subjective. They're still capitalist democracies in my mind. If they weren't, you know, a capitalist country, I couldn't go to those I couldn't go to those countries and do business if I wanted to. I could purchase a house in Sweden, Norway, and Finland, and I could do business in those countries if I wanted to. You know, but it's you know, those aren't socialist countries. Venezuela is a socialist country, and look at how it's going for Venezuela. So that's that. But that's pretty much my discussion on that. So that's pretty much what my teacher said. You know, he always said that capitalism isn't a perfect system. It has problems. There's stupid things in capitalism. There's greedy corporations. I get that. I'm not denying that. I'm not one of those people that say there isn't greedy corporations. There are. I worked for a greedy corporation in the past. I know how these people think. You know, my mom is like a cleaner for these CEOs in Manhattan. My mom cleans CEO offices. The CEOs treat her bad, and they're scummy. They're scumbags. So I understand that. I understand there's problems with capitalism. I understand there's issues with it. But if you still but even despite my mom you know, getting treated like crap by these CEOs and everything like that, my mom still would never want to live back under communism again. She says, you know, these people are scumbags, which I agree with her on. But it's not. She still says I would still rather prefer living under a capitalist system than living under a communist or a socialist system. So that's what my mom says, and I agree fully with her. But that's it. And I think that a lot of the young people that they say that communism is good and everything like that. They never lived in a communist country. They never experienced that. They don't know what it's like. I haven't lived in a communist country. I've been living in a socialist country, but my parents have. My parents are witnesses to that. My parents have told me all about it, and I know plenty of other people who have lived in these countries as well who talk about it. There's when you look at these countries, why is it that the boats from Cuba are only going one way? Why are there not people from all these people who love communism so much? Why are they not taking boats to Cuba? Why are all the boats from Cuba coming to America? They're coming here because they have greater freedom here. They have the freedom to make money. They have the freedom to speak their mind. They have the freedom to practice what religion they want. Cuba is officially a state atheist country. You know, you can be an atheist in America. You could be a Christian. You could be Muslim. You could be Jewish. The government isn't going to tell you what religion you can and can't practice, and it's not going to discriminate against you. Discrimination based on religion is illegal, so you can't do that. But in Cuba, if you're not an atheist, it's very hard to advance in the government or advance anywhere in society. You know, even to be a Communist Party member in Cuba, you have to be an atheist. So that's that's it. Cuba does everything. They control how much money you can make. They give you ration cards. They discriminate against you based on religion. So people, are coming to America for individual freedom, the freedom to practice what religion they want, the freedom to say what they want, and the freedom to make as much money as they want, and get the government the hell out of their lives. So I personally don't like government intervention, but it's in people's personal lives. But it's But that's the idea of America. America is the idea of individual freedom, and it's the idea that somebody can come to this country, start out with nothing, and eventually work their way up to be rich. I know it's hard for people, and there are problems, sure, and there's people that rig the system. I'm not like one of those people that think that it's fair. I know there's people that rig the system, and I know that a lot of really rich elites. And when I say rich elites, I'm not talking about the average billionaire. I'm talking about the billionaires. I get that. I know there's billionaires that rig the system to their advantage, but it's still we can improve on that. We can try our best to fix that. In this country, at least, we have a right to fix that. We have a democracy. We can try to fix that and change that system. Where in a country like Cuba, you have no hope for change. There's none. Nothing's ever going to change. And so that's ultimately what I say about that. Let me see here. Did my thing turned back on here. Saints Row reboot video soon this week, and I'm gonna try to have it up crispy. This weekend it'll be up. But yeah, the reboot will be up on the reboot should be up this weekend. I have to. There's a lot of work that I've been putting in the Saints Row review, but I'm not gonna get into arguments on what country has like what Western country necessarily has the best standards of living, because I would say that, like, if you compare a lot of the Western countries, for instance, to some of the the poorer countries, like I would say that you could say which country has like a better standards of living, but then the question is, which country do have the best standards of living? And so that, I personally think at that point, it's a subjective thing, and so everyone can be proud of their country, and everyone can point out that each country does like something better than another country. Like there's people that will say, oh, my country does this better than your country, but then another person could turn around and say, my country does this better than your country too, another thing. So there's like each country, like I would say, does something better than another country, but then another country does something better than that country too. And so that's that. I wouldn't want to live in any other country personally. I love America. I love my country, and so this is the country that I will live in and probably die in one day. So that's like I wouldn't want to live anywhere else personally. This is my country and I like it here, and I understand it's not a perfect system, but I'm very happy with my country as it is, because I understand that it could be far, far, far much worse. And so, like, I've talked to people from Venezuela before. I haven't met them in person, but I've talked to some people in Venezuela from online, and they tell me horror stories just about it. And so I'm so grateful that I didn't grow up in a country like that. So I think when I see, like, it personally pisses me off when I see like people that like they say that they hate this country, or they say that, like, America is the most evil country in the world, and stuff like that. America does not come close to being the most evil country in the world. There's a big difference between America as a country and the U.S. government. And not to get into politics here or anything like that, but I know the U.S. government does stupid things. I know that. I'm not an idiot. I know they do stupid things. I know they do bad things as well. I don't, deny that. Like, I personally think the Iraq War is one of the stupidest things they've done. But it was, it's America as a country, as a people. We're not an evil nation. We're a very, very welcoming, friendly nation. We don't interfere in people's personal lives. And so that's ultimately, what I think about America. So that's like, we don't come close to being, the most evil country in the world. And anyone who thinks that America is the most evil country in the world, I think that person is an idiot. Yeah. Yeah, there's always a difference between I try to always separate the country and the government. I always try my best to separate that. Like, I hate the North Korean government. I don't hate the North Korean people. I hate the Cuban government. I don't hate the Cuban people. I hate the Chinese government. I don't hate the Chinese people. So that's like, yeah. So it's just that this country gave me a lot of opportunity too. Hey, Pro, did you know that the Blitzkrieg in World War II, the German troops used meth to stay awake? That part of Germany conquered so much territory. Yes, I know about that. The German troops gave their soldiers meth. That is actually true. There's also talk that Hitler was a meth addict himself, and Hitler was like a very crazy evil guy. So it's no surprise to me that he was also a drug addict. Did you hear about Twitter supposedly shutting down yesterday? Yeah, but I don't care about it, Mario. I really don't care about what goes on at Twitter personally. And I honestly don't think what I've seen on Twitter. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk. Like, people think that I'm some Musk fan or something like that. I don't like him, but I don't hate him either. I'm just like neutral. I'm just like that guy in the middle. I don't care. So it's not that I like him or dislike him. So I could really care less what Elon Musk does with Twitter. And Elon Musk could delete Twitter, and I could care less, really. It's like Twitter is like such a toxic form of social media, and it's honestly, Elon cannot make it any worse. He can't. I don't think he can. Like, the garbage that I've seen on Twitter, I don't think Elon can make it any worse. So that's just my personal view on Twitter. I don't think it can be made any worse than it already is. Bro, I really want to move to the USA to get away from racial discrimination. Oh, I'm sorry that you deal with that, that Hikari. I wish you the best. I'm okay, yeah. Yeah, and it's like I said, I don't care. Honestly, I'll tell you this, you know, there was a tweet that I put up, a few weeks ago, and it's the last thing I say. I guess I'll probably get off here, because I'm really hungry, guys. I haven't eaten dinner, so I'm gonna get off here in a moment. But what I will say is that I put out a tweet, like a few weeks ago, and it pissed off some people. I didn't even think it was gonna piss people off, but it pissed off some people. And basically what I said in that tweet was I said, if you care more about Elon Musk buying Twitter, if you're complaining about Elon Musk buying Twitter and you care more about that than inflation, you care more about that than the economy, and you care more about that than gas prices, and then your priorities are in the wrong place. And so some people got really pissed off at me for that, and so I saw some negative tweets in response to that. But it was my point is, why is Elon Musk buying Twitter like the most important thing in the world? Why is that? I care way more about the economy. I care way more about what inflation is gonna be next week than like what Elon Musk like buying like Twitter. I care more about gas prices. I don't care about, you know, some billionaire buying like some toxic form of social media. I don't care about that. And it's not a big deal to me. I don't care, really. You know, Elon could delete Twitter, and, you know, Elon could even block anybody, like, he doesn't like. I'll probably stop using it if he does that, but it's like, I don't care. Like, I don't care whether I don't think he can make it worse. Like, it's just, I just don't care about social media. I don't think it's important to me. And it's just, you know, I care way more. I personally care way more about whether the average American can put food on the table than whether, you know, some billionaire is going to buy social media. For me, that's not important. It's just stupid. Thank you for caring about things that actually matter. Thank you. Yeah, but it's like I said, I don't think you can make it worse. I was making a Mafia story for a Reddit online character named Kiki, who was an associate of the Leone family in 1897, and it is hard to write. Do you have any tips to help? Well, the thing is, though, I don't know if you might want to set this in the Red Dead world, because I don't think the Red Dead world is in the same world as GTA, because New York is mentioned, and New York is Liberty City in the GTA world. But your Red Dead Online character's name is Kiki, and you're writing a story about, like, Kiki being in the Mafia, right, or an associate of the Mafia. What I will say is that maybe you could include this as part of this. The Italian Mafia, I'm assuming this is the Italian Mafia that you're referring to. The Italian Mafia is very sexist, so if your character is like a female character, you might include that as like a plot point. Like, not advocating it or anything. I'm just saying that, like, maybe you might want to include that as, like, a plot point or something like that. That happening. But the Italian Mafia is very sexist in its, like, in its hierarchy system. And so there is no such thing as a made woman. So there's made men, but there's no such thing as a made woman in the Italian Mafia. The closest thing that you have to, like, a made woman in the Italian Mafia is, like, the wife of the boss. That's, like, the closest thing that you have to, like, a made woman. But, like, women are not generally allowed to join a mafia. They might be associates, but they generally aren't allowed to. But however, though, there are some women bosses that were very intelligent people. And they were actually much more smarter bosses than a lot of the male bosses. So there was what's her name? Valeria in, you know, Modern Warfare 2. I actually thought she was a realistic depiction of a boss. Because there's plenty of, like, you know, female bosses of criminal organizations that were very smart and very calculating. No, I haven't done a review on GTA Expanded Enhanced. Thank you, Purple Haze, for the super chat. But in Italy, in The Sopranos, there's a lady boss. Yes, that is true. But I think the lady boss, I think that the reason that she's but the thing is, this is Sicily, so it's a little bit different than America. And the one that's in Italy, the Italian boss, I know what you're talking about. Her father was the original boss, if I remember this correctly, right? It was her father. And so her father was, like, really old in, like, a wheelchair, and he stepped down. And so her father looks like he's really in charge. He's like the face of the mafia, but she's really in charge. And actually, ironically, sometimes this sexism actually helps criminal organizations. Because what happens is, the police are sexist as well. And so the police aren't going to suspect that a woman is controlling these criminal organizations a lot of times. And so having a woman boss is actually a lot of times smart, because it draws less attention to the criminal organization. So there actually have been a few mafias that actually have been controlled by women. That actually has happened. But generally, the Italian mafia does not allow women to join their ranks. But there are some, very smart women who have led these criminal organizations. Yeah. But sexism is like, that was like, people overlooked like a lot of stuff because of that. Racism. Another topic is racism is racism. You could argue that racism is one of the reasons that we were unprepared at Pearl Harbor, because there was a lot of racism in the U.S. at the time before the Pearl Harbor attacks. And so what actually happened was there was a lot of when Japan actually attacked the U.S. at Pearl Harbor. The American newspapers at the time were so surprised that Japan managed to launch this huge attack at Pearl Harbor. They didn't think Japan had the capability to do that, and there was a lot of racism in this. So they severely underestimated the Japanese. They thought the Japanese were weak. So racism did play a part in not being prepared at Pearl Harbor. They underestimated the Japanese. They didn't think the Japanese were capable of planning and carrying out this attack. And what actually happened is when the American media had reported on that, they actually claimed they made a conspiracy theory. And their conspiracy theory, they were claiming that the Nazis had supplied the Japanese at Pearl Harbor, which they were allies, but there's no proof that the Nazis had given the Japanese technology to attack Pearl Harbor. The Nazis and the Japanese did exchange some technology, but the Nazis didn't give them technology to attack Pearl Harbor with. That was something that Japan had planned on their own, with their own military. And so the American government and the American media at the time, because they were pretty racist, they overlooked this and they underestimated Japan. And one of the reasons they were very unprepared at Pearl Harbor at that that happening. Yeah. But that was it. But Japan also underestimated American manufacturing. They thought that by taking out the American fleet, that would they didn't realize that there's so many battleships weren't there, and they didn't realize the American morale and the American industrial power. And so the Japanese also underestimated that. But yeah, that was also, and the thing is, even the Nazis were surprised. And the Nazis didn't think that Japan even had capabilities to attack Pearl Harbor. So even they were surprised when the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. So racism did play a bit in that. Okay. Giltendi. Well, no, the planes that were coming in during Pearl Harbor, they saw those planes, but they thought they were American planes. Because Pearl Harbor is it was in the Hawaii, which is in the middle of the ocean, and so you don't think that a bunch of planes are just gonna come out of nowhere and just start bombing you. You don't expect that. At least not the average American expected that to happen. And so the Japanese planes got through a lot of the defenses at Hawaii because we didn't see that coming. But I'm saying is that the American government and the media underestimated the Japanese empire's technological capabilities. And so they didn't think that the Japanese were capable of an attack like that, but the Japanese very much were, and they were prepared and they planned that attack, and there was that. Well, Graves was a scumbag in Modern Warfare. What do I think of Hoover? I think Hoover was a foolish president. Hoover was not a good president. Hoover was a complicated man because Hoover was a great leader when it came to foreign policy. He was good for foreign policy, dealing with other countries. But he was terrible when it came to domestic policy. Just terrible. Hoover's greatest accomplishment was the Hoover Dam. He built the Hoover Dam, but the thing is, though, he paraded around the Hoover Dam, and he would talk about the Hoover Dam, and he would say, oh, I built the Hoover Dam. But the thing about that is that the Hoover Dam was just one accomplishment. The vast majority of the people were struggling. They were poor during the Great Depression. And so they didn't think that Hoover cared. And so those little shanty towns that people lived in, they called them Hoovervilles to blame Hoover for that situation. But, Hoover basically refused to interfere in the economy at all. And he would just say, oh, the economy is eventually going to correct itself. Everything will go back to normal. That was just his. He was just so against government intervention in the economy that he didn't want to do anything whatsoever. And he just thought that depression was eventually going to correct itself, and it was all eventually going to fix itself when that wasn't going to happen. I'm not really a fan of the government getting involved in the economy. I'm more of a free market guy, like I said. But even I understand that during the Depression, the government had to get involved in the economy, and the government had to play a role in the economy because there was the worst economic crisis that we've ever had in this history, is the Great Depression. And so that was like, that was essential for the government to, play a role in the economy. And so I think Roosevelt did a much better job as president than like Hoover. Like Hoover, I think Hoover was out of touch with the, average person, and I think that's where Roosevelt won on that. Roosevelt connected more with the average, working class American, and that's ultimately, why Hoover had lost the election so badly. But what I was saying about American foreign policy is like the reason Hoover was good on American foreign policy is because Hoover had wanted to fight the Nazis right away. So Hoover wanted to stop them right away. He wanted to send people to Europe to fight the Nazis and stop them right away. When most people in America actually didn't at the time. Hoover also had he wanted to help Finland. So Finland had gotten attacked by the Soviet Union and invaded, and so Hoover sent aid to Finland. He organized events to help Finland, and so he was good for that. He helped people. He helped save people's lives. So he's a complicated person. This is why it's important from history to look at a person from all angles. Hoover did good things, dealing with other countries and stuff like that, but he was terrible when it came to domestic policy. So, you can't just look at a person being all bad and, all good. You gotta look at, the bad and the good that they did. And so that was well, I personally think Teddy Roosevelt was a better leader than Franklin Roosevelt was, but Franklin Roosevelt I think was a better leader than Hoover. I'm not really tired. I'm more of hungry. But I guess we'll probably I guess we'll probably end off here. Let me see here. What is the better rifle, the Kar 98 or the Arisaka Type 99? I would say that the Kar 98. I mean, the Arisaka has aircraft sights, and it has better sights to a degree. And the Arisaka has a dust cover, which a lot of bolt action rifles don't have. However, though, I would say that the Kar 98 is the better rifle, even though the Arisaka has some of the better sights and the dust cover. The reason I would say that the Mauser is better is because the Mauser is just more mass produced. The Mauser, you can find Mausers all over, all over the world. In every continent, you can find them. You won't find Arisakas in every continent. Mausers, you could find every continent. And Mausers, ammo was just much more common for them. So I would say it was the readiness and the availability. I would say that would probably make the Kar 98 the better rifle. But the Arisaka is also a really good rifle about it. I know rifles much better than I know, tanks and aircraft. What's the next GTA lore video about? Michael, Trevor, and Brad. Are revolvers actually stronger than Glocks? It depends on the revolver. It depends on, it depends on the cartridge. It really depends on the bullet. It really depends on that. It depends on, what the cartridge is that you're firing. If you're talking about a 22 revolver versus a Glock, no, the Glock's going to be stronger. If you're talking about a 44 Magnum versus a Glock, the 44 Magnum's going to be stronger. The Glock's generally a 9mm. So that's what I'll say about that. I do not know who that is. Larry Hoover, the founder of the Gangster Disciples. I really don't know who that is. Third Street. Thank you for the super chat. The mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. You're talking about that conspiracy theory where planes are just disappearing in the Bermuda Triangle and nobody knows what's happening to them? Is that what you're talking about? I don't know. I don't know. I just personally think it's bad luck. I don't think that there's any evidence to suggest that I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that it's some conspiracy or something like that. Yes, the Saboteur. The Saboteur's next. After Godfather 2, it'll be the Saboteur. That's what we'll be playing. So you'll have your wish, Marshall. Yeah, but I'm sorry. I actually didn't know who that was. That figure that you were talking about before. But I guess we'll be wrapping it up, guys. I'll answer 1 or 2 questions before I go here. I'm a bit tired and I want to eat something, and I want to finish up the Saints Row review, so I'll be editing that tonight. If you could choose any historical event to experience, what would you choose? It's difficult. Because most of the historical, most significant historical events in history are usually violent events in history. I would probably, maybe the American Revolution. Maybe I'd want to see what it was like to live in the 13 colonies at the time. What's your favorite GTA city in the 3D era? Vice City. What will you have for dinner? What will I have for dinner? Probably a chicken patty. Probably that. Probably maybe no 2 chicken patties. Probably because I'm really hungry. So I'll probably have 2 chicken patties. And then maybe I'll have some ice cream later. Maybe one day I'll visit Serbia. Lonely. Okay, I'll see you, Fernando. Winston Churchill, a UK war leader during World War II, was said to be horrible at being a peacetime leader. Yes, and that's the thing is, though, that's why Winston Churchill was so popular during the, he was so popular during the World War II, because Winston Churchill stood up to the Nazis, and he said, no, we're not going to give up, we're going to fight until the end. We're not giving into this. It was because... Basically, Churchill had seen what appeasement had done, and all these countries constantly giving Hitler this and that and that and that and that, and so Churchill said enough. We're not giving into this. This stupid psycho. This stupid psycho dictator. And so that's why Churchill was so beloved, because he refused to give in to the Nazis and he stood his ground against them. However, though, Churchill, on the other hand, was not good for domestic policies, and so people didn't like him for that, and that's why Labour won the election. They did so much better than Churchill, because if World War II was still going on, Churchill would have won the election. But because World War II was over, he lost because people wanted him as a wartime leader. They didn't want him as a domestic leader, and so it was that. The people that make the GTA 6 clickbait is just stupid. I would yeah. Yes, I did hear about that, Edgy. Yes, I know about that. And Pro, excited for the World Cup? Don't really pay attention to it much. But yeah, that was a really bad. They were a really bad political party. Edgy. They did some really horrible things. In Yugoslavia. My favorite party said October 29. October 29. Yeah. So I was basically I was referencing the clickbaiters who they were constantly saying. The clickbaiters were constantly saying October 29, and nothing happened. Pro, do you blame the West for Ho Chi Minh's alliance with the USSR? He was actually pro-US, but the West didn't recognize Vietnam after World War II. Yeah, to an extent. I would say that the French have more blame for that, though, than the U.S. does, because France didn't want to let Vietnam go as a colony, and so they were gonna try to force them to be a colony still, and Vietnam didn't want to be their colony. So I'd say the U.S. has some responsibility for that, but it's also, I would say it's more on France. But I guess we'll be Emperor Hirohito. I mentioned him before. This will be the last things that I'll say. Anarchy is a stupid system. Anarchy is a system with no government. It's dumb. The best way to describe anarchy once is literally you guys want to know something really funny? You guys want to know something really funny? I'll tell you about anarchy. My teacher shut down anarchy. He shut down anarchy so badly. In just 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes, he shut down the entire idea of anarchy and how stupid it was. He pointed it out. But basically about anarchy is, here's what my teacher said about anarchy. So I was in a, my degree in college was law enforcement technology, right? And so I was in a, what was the name of the class? I'm trying to remember. It was my second to last class. It was like 2018 or 2019 when I took this class. It might have been, was it criminal forensics? I'm trying to remember what class it was. But regardless, it was like a criminal class. It was a criminal law class. And so there's like some, stuff that we would learn about investigations and like proper procedure and everything like that. And so my teacher had mentioned anarchy. And this one student in the class admitted to being an anarchist. And he said that he thought that anarchy was a good system. Which, the first thing I don't understand about that is I don't understand why he was in there for a law enforcement degree if he's an anarchist. Anarchists don't believe in government, and so they don't believe that the police should have a right to exist. So I don't know why he was in a law enforcement class in the first place. You can tell he wasn't the most smartest person. But he said that he thinks anarchy is a good system, and my teacher said, why do you think anarchy is a good system? Explain to me. And my teacher actually wanted to hear his argument, and he talked about how the government basically gets involved in people's personal lives, and and people should have the freedom to decide in their own personal life and everything. He was just basically, he was talking about it from an individualist argument. He was saying that the government has no right to get involved in people's personal lives. And to an extent, I agree. I hate government getting involved in people's personal lives. Like I'm a big advocate of personal freedom, individual liberty. I strongly support that. I don't like the government getting involved in people's lives, but I still support government. I want government to be small, but that doesn't mean I want no government. I still want government to an extent. But having no government is a disaster. It's having no government, that would just be stupid. And so, my teacher, asked him to explain. And so my teacher asked him, this is basically how my teacher shut this whole thing down. My teacher said, he asked him where he lives, the anarchist student in my class. He asked him, where do you live? And he said he lives in a town that's maybe like 10 or so miles from the college. And he drives. So he takes a 10-mile drive to the college. And the area that he has to drive through in New York wasn't really highway area. So he had to take like a lot of side roads and intersections. And so my teacher knew the route. And the reason that my teacher asked him where he lives is important. Because my teacher said, okay, you think that anarchy is a good system? He said, you would not make it to this school without traffic lights. That's basically, he said, you would not get here without crashing your car without traffic lights. Because he said, who manages the traffic lights? The government. And who builds the infrastructure for the traffic lights? The government. And so he said, you would not make it to class if there was anarchy. That all those traffic lights, because he has to go through multiple intersections. And that's how he shut him down. And the whole class was laughing, and he had no response to that. And so that was like a great comeback. It was, when you really think about it, you think about it, who's going to manage the traffic lights? Who's going to enforce the law? You're not going to have a police if you have anarchy. So that means anybody can come to your house and take your stuff, and nobody's going to be there to stop it. Anarchists believe that only people themselves can stop the criminals. That there's no room for police. I believe in self-defense. I believe people have a right to defend themselves. But there should also be a police force that investigates this stuff and upholds the law. And so that's like that's what I'll say is that's stupid. When you really think about that, that's really a really good argument against anarchy. Is this that you wouldn't be able to drive anywhere without the government, because there'd be no roads and no one would be managing the lights. So everybody would be crashing into each other. It'd be like Watch Dogs. It'd be like Watch Dogs when you hack the traffic lights. Everybody would be crashing into each other with no government to manage the roads. So that's exactly what it would be like. Yeah, but that's about that. What are you sorry for, Mr. Weifu? You don't have anything to apologize for. You're fine, man. And then somebody else was asking me about Hirohito, and Hirohito is the last thing that I'll say here. You're fine, Mr. Weifu. You're not Mr. Weifu. You're not a bad person. The person that was asking me about Emperor Hirohito is a bad guy. What I'll say about him is Hirohito gave permission to the Japanese government to commence Unit 731, which Unit 731 was a covert biological facility where the Japanese would do horrible experiments on people in China. They would kidnap people. They would test diseases on them, flamethrowers. They would drop diseases in wells in China. They would gas Chinese people. And so the emperor signed off on this. They asked for permission to do this. The emperor knew about this. He signed off on this. The emperor knew about the Japan's military conquest. He was no fool. He knew about that. He was perfectly fine. Even though Tojo was the one that was calling most of the shots, the shogun of Japan, the emperor was perfectly fine with that. And so the emperor was not a good man. Like a lot of people defend Emperor Hirohito, and they say that Emperor Hirohito was like a good guy, and that he didn't have that much power and everything like that. He knew about what was going on. He did nothing to stop it. And Emperor Hirohito really, throughout his life, really did not show any sympathy towards the countries that Japan had, destroyed. Like Japan destroyed China, they destroyed Korea, Vietnam, Mongolia. There's so many countries that Japan just ravaged. And so it was just, he really never really made apologies to these countries. The only reason that Hirohito wasn't hanged was because he was considered the cultural symbol of Japan. And so the U.S. knew that if they hanged him, that he would have become a martyr. And so the Japanese public saw him as like a god. And so they would constantly keep rebelling, and they would constantly keep fighting. And basically, it would be endless civil war, and it would never end. And so that's the reason why Hirohito spared, because the U.S. forced him to tell his people to stand down. And so when Hirohito told the Japanese public to stand down, they stood down, and they stopped fighting, and they surrendered. And so when the emperor tells them to do that, they listened. And that was ultimately it. Japan today is a very peaceful country. It's one of the best countries in the world. Like, if I had to choose my top 10 countries that I would live in, Japan would definitely be on that list. But I'm saying is that Japan back in the day was not the same Japan that we have today. People were very brainwashed. They saw the emperor as a god. They were willing to die for the emperor. They would blow themselves up for the emperor. They would crash planes into ships for the emperor. And so the emperor was seen as a god. And so that's why the U.S. didn't kill him, because if they killed him, it would be endless civil war. It would be constant civil war, and the U.S. wouldn't have the resources to constantly fight that. And the U.S. wanted an ally against the Soviet Union. And so the best way for that was they told the emperor, okay, you're going to stop your military conquest. Japan is going to disarm. You're not going to invade anyone else again. We're going to take the top Japanese generals. We're going to put them on trial, and if they're guilty, they're going to get hanged. We're going to spare you, but you have to tell your people to stand down, and you have to tell your people that the war is over. And so that's basically what the emperor did. But when the emperor announced that we're ending fighting, he didn't say we're surrendering. He said we're ceasing hostilities. And so it worked out for America. Even though the emperor was guilty, I think it was probably the best thing not to hang him, because if you hanged him, a lot more people would have died, and the fighting would have just gone on and on and on. And so I think it was ultimately better to get the emperor just to stand down and tell his people to surrender. And so that's ultimately what it was about. Thank you, Lonely Mobster. Thank you for the sponsoring my channel. Thank you, man. But I guess we'll wrap this up here, guys. We'll wrap this up here. I hope you guys like my streams, like my discussions and stuff like that. But we'll wrap this stream up here. I'm gonna make some food because I'm hungry, and I'm gonna start working on the Saints Row review. Tomorrow we'll have a Godfather part. So if you want to see, my my playthrough, and you want to see like my shades and everything like that, we'll do the Godfather part tomorrow, or I should say today technically, because it's already the next day. It's past midnight for me at least. So like in 12 hours from now, expect another Godfather part to be up or around there. I guess we'll wrap this up here, and I'm going to get some food, and I'm going to try to finish up the Saints Row review, because the Saints Row review is coming up nicely, and I hope you guys check out the Saints Row review when I make it. So thank you guys for watching the stream. I do appreciate it. You guys are awesome, and I love all of you guys. You guys help me a lot, when I used to struggle on this channel and stuff like that, and you guys got me through that, and you helped me out, and I really appreciate that, and I'm very grateful to all of you guys. So thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed the stream. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, guys. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.